I used to drive the same stretch of Highway 19 every night. A long, empty road lined with pine trees that swallow the headlights whole. I've been a trucker for 30 years, but that night still sticks with me. The night I found the bike, the fog was thick enough to chew. My radio had gone silent miles back, and the only sound was my tires humming over the asphalt. Around mile marker 72, I saw something bright in the ditch, a glint of metal under my high beams. I slowed down, eased to the side, and killed the engine. It was a child's bicycle. Pink frame, one handlebar wrapped in faded ribbon. The back wheel spun slowly, like someone had just let it go. I looked around, calling out into the fog. No answer. The woods stood quiet, still as a photograph. At first, I thought maybe a family had broken down nearby, or maybe the bike had just fallen off a car rack. But the front tire was bent inward, and the grass around it was flattened in a circle, like something had fallen there. The chain was broken, the seat twisted sideways. I felt uneasy, standing there with my breath making ghosts in the cold. There was a narrow trail leading into the pines. My flashlight caught what looked like shoe prints, small ones, and something else. Barefoot impressions right beside them. I don't know why, but I followed them a few steps in. The smell hit me first, damp earth and rust, the kind of smell that clings to you. I heard a soft laugh ahead, not a child's laugh. Lower, what somehow, it echoed between the trees, then faded. I froze. The light flickered. Just once, I turned back to the road, suddenly aware of how far I'd walked. When I got to my truck, the fog had thickened. The bike was gone. The ditch was empty, like it had never been there. I sat behind the wheel for a long time, staring at the spot. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Eventually, I drove on, pretending I hadn't seen anything. For years, I kept that night to myself. Then, a few summers back, I saw a missing persons poster taped to the diner window. A girl, maybe 10, smiling with 2 missing teeth. The photo was old, but I recognized a bike beside her. Same ribbons, same pink frame. I asked the waitress about it. She said the girl disappeared in 1986. They found her backpack near that same mile marker, but nothing else. No remains, no evidence. Just a story people in town didn't talk about anymore. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I think about pulling over again. The road's still there, still lined with those same pines. I imagine stepping out, hearing that soft laugh in the fog, and seeing a flash of pink metal just before the dark closes in. I don't drive much these days, but every so often when the wind shifts, I swear I can hear a bell, like the one on that bicycle, ringing faintly through the trees. They searched for weeks after that night. I wasn't part at first. I told myself what I saw was just a trick of the fog, that the bike must have been picked up by the police or the family. But when the missing poster started showing up at the gas station, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Her name was Emily Harper, 10 years old, vanished on her way home from a friend's house. The sheriff's department organized search parties. Half the town turned up with flashlights and hunting dogs. I remember the sound of the boots crunching to the pine needles, men shouting her name into the fog. "Emily, you out there, sweetheart?" No one ever answered. I joined one of the searches on the 3rd night. The air was heavy, the kind that makes your lungs work harder. Flashlights cut through the mist in thin beams, glinting off the wet leaves. I kept close to 2 other men, Tom Willis and a kid named Ray. Tom was quiet, a Vietnam vet who'd seen too much. Ray was just eager to help, barely 20, nervous energy in every step. We covered the area where I'd found the bike. I didn't say it was me who'd seen it first. I didn't want to talk about that part. But as soon as we reached a bend in the road, I felt that same cold weight in my stomach, like something in the dark was watching us. It was around midnight when Tom's flashlight went out. He smacked the side of it, cursed under his breath. I lifted mine to help, and for a second, I thought I saw something between the trees. A flicker of white, like a dress catching moonlight. It vanished before I could blink. "Did you see that?" I asked. Ray laughed nervously. "See what?" I didn't answer. We searched until dawn, finding nothing but mud and broken branches. The sheriff called Everyone backed to the lot by the highway. People looked worn out, faces drawn, eyes sunken, the kind of tired that feels like it's eating you alive. Over the next few days, they brought in dogs and volunteers from neighboring towns. Reporters came too, setting up cameras near the pines. Every night the same thing, lights moving through the woods, voices calling, then silence. Always silence. After a week, people started whispering about laughter in the trees, about lights that weren't from flashlights. A few of the older folks said that land had bad roots. Something about an old church that burned down in the 1930s, buried under the forest floor. Nobody wanted to say it out loud, but everyone felt it. The place didn't want to be searched. One night, I drove past the site on my way back from a delivery. It was late, close to 2 a.m. The fog was back, thicker than ever. My headlights caught something again, movement between the trees. Not quick, like an animal, but slow, purposeful. I pulled over before I realized I was doing it. The woods were silent. Even the crickets had stopped. Then I heard it, laughter. Faint, almost playful. It floated just beyond the tree line. I froze. It wasn't right. It wasn't how a child laughs. It sounded hollow, like someone remembering how to laugh, but not quite getting it right. I backed away, got in my truck, and drove until the sound faded. The next morning, I told Tom what I'd heard. He just stared at me. Then he said, "You're not the first." He told me a few of the volunteers had quit after hearing the same thing. Some said they saw lights. Soft blue glows floating between the trees, never in the same place twice. The sheriff tried to calm everyone down, said it was swamp gas or locals playing pranks. But we didn't have swamps, and nobody was laughing. By the third week, the search was smaller. People stopped showing up. The sheriff's office said they'd scale back efforts. But Tom kept going. Every night he'd park by the pines, sit with his flashlight, and stare into the dark. One night I went with him. We sat in silence, listening to the wind whistle through the trees. Around midnight, we both saw it. A light, not white, but soft and gold, like candlelight. It moved slowly through the forest, floating a few feet off the ground. Tom stood up whispering, "Emily?" He started walking toward it. I wanted to stop him, but something about that light drew me too. We followed it for what felt like minutes, but could have been hours. The air grew colder. Our breath turned to fog. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the light vanished. The forest went black. Tom's flashlight flickered back on. We were standing in a clearing, one I'd never seen before. There were stones laid out in a circle, half buried, moss covering most of them. In the middle sat a pile of old, rotted wood, like the remains of a building. Tom bent down and picked something up, a piece of metal, rusted and twisted. It looked like part of a bicycle frame. Before I could say anything, we both heard again. That laughter, louder this time, closer. It came from behind us, from the edge of the clearing. We turned, lights trembling in our hands. The sound stopped. Then, from deep in the woods, a faint voice whispered, "You found me." I don't remember running, but somehow we were back by the road, gasping for air. Tom didn't say a word the whole drive home. A few days later, the search was officially called off. They never found her. The sheriff said it was time to move forward, but nobody really did. People avoided that stretch of road. Hunters said their dogs refused to go near it. Kids told stories about seeing a little girl standing by the ditch, waving. A month after the search ended, Tom stopped coming to town. His wife said he was still out there every night, sitting by the pines, waiting for the light to come back. Sometimes I drive past that spot. I tell myself I won't look, but I always do. The trees look darker there, the fog thicker. Every once in a while, I think I see a small glow between the trunks, golden, flickering like a candle. And sometimes, when the wind is just right, I swear I can hear it again. That broken, hollow laugh drifting out from the woods, calling me by name. I haven't gone back in years, but I know that place is still out there, waiting. It's been 36 years since that night on Highway 19. I don't drive trucks anymore. My back gave out, my eyesight went soft, and somewhere along the way, The road stopped feeling like home. I bought a little house on the edge of town, far from the pines. But no matter how far I went, I couldn't stop thinking about that ditch. That damn ditch. You ever have a place that won't leave you alone? You can move, change your life, bury the memory deep, but it's like the land itself remembers you. I'd wake some nights, heart racing, thinking I heard laughter in the wind. Sometimes it was a girl's voice. Sometimes my own. It started getting worse last year. The dreams. In them, I'd be standing on the shoulder of that same road, fog swirling around me, and I'd hear a bell jingling faint like a bike bell. When I'd wake, my sheets would be damp with sweat, and the sound would still be in my ears. So one morning I decided to go back. Just once. Just to see it again. Maybe to prove to myself it was just an empty ditch by the pines. The drive out there felt shorter than it should have. The fields were overgrown, the road cracked and faded. But the trees hadn't changed a bit. Still tall and narrow, leaning toward the asphalt like they were listening. When I reached mile marker 72, I slowed down. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. The ditch was right where it had always been, choked with weeds now, half filled with mud. I parked on the shoulder and killed the engine. The air was still. No birds. No wind. Just silence thick enough to feel. The smell hit me first. Damp dirt and something sweet underneath, like flowers left too long in water. I climbed out and stood by the ditch, staring down. The ground looked soft, uneven. I told myself I'd only stay a minute, but then I noticed something. The grass near the ditch was shorter, trampled maybe, like someone or something had been standing there. I crouched down and brushed my hand over the mud. It was warm, not from the sun, warm like breath. My stomach turned. I stepped back, trying to laugh it off, but the sound stuck in my throat. I lit a cigarette, even though I quit years ago. The smoke made the air feel thicker, harder to breathe. That's when I heard it. A soft click, like metal shifting. Then a faint jingle, high and sharp. The sound of a bicycle bell. It came from the ditch. I froze. The cigarette slipped from my fingers. I leaned closer, listening. For a second, everything went dead quiet. Then something exhaled. A long, wet breath rising up from under the dirt. I stumbled back, nearly falling. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. The sound came again. Another breath, heavier this time. The mud rippled, like something moving beneath the surface. Emily? I don't know why I said it. The name just came out like I'd been waiting my whole life to say it aloud. The ditch went still. Then softly, too soft, a voice whispered back. You came back. I froze. The voice was small, delicate, but wrong, like it was being spoken through water, each word bubbling and warping. I waited, it said. My knees locked. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. My legs felt heavy, like the air itself was holding me down. The ground shifted again. A faint shape rose beneath the mud, a small outline, fragile and curled. A hand pressed up from the dirt. The skin was gray, slick with moisture, tiny fingers reaching toward me. I stepped back, tripping on a root. My flashlight, I brought one without even realizing, rolled toward the ditch and stopped at the edge. The beam caught something shiny in the mud, a ribbon, faded pink, wet and half buried. It was the same one from that bike. The voice came again, closer now. You left me. I wanted to shout, to tell it I tried to help, that I didn't know, that I was just a man on the road doing his job. But the words died before I could speak. The mud began to pulse, slow and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. I heard another sound, low, almost a hum, coming from deep below. It felt like the earth itself was breathing. The trees around me started to sway, though there was no wind. The pines creaked, whispering against each other. The sound built until it became a chorus of soft voices, murmuring just below hearing. Down here, don't leave, stay. I backed away, shaking, my vision blurred. I could feel my pulse in my throat, pounding against my skin. The ditch was moving now, the mud bubbling like something alive beneath it. Then I saw her. For a split second, she was standing there, A small figure in the fog, just beyond the ditch. Her hair hung wet over her face, her arms limp at her sides. The pink bicycle leaned against her leg. It was spinning in place. I blinked and she was gone. The ditch was silent again. I ran. I didn't look back. I don't even remember getting into the truck. Just the sound of my tires skidding as I tore down that road, gas pedal pressed to the floor. When I got home, the clock said 3:17 a.m. I had left at noon. I don't know where those missing hours went. Since that day, I've tried to convince myself it wasn't real, that I imagined it, but the smell, that damp, rotten sweetness, still lingers in my clothes. And sometimes at night, I'll wake up and swear I hear breathing. Not mine. Slow and wet, like the sound of earth shifting. A week ago, I found something outside my door. A small piece of metal, rusted and bent. A bicycle bell. When I picked it up, it jingled, soft like a laugh. Now, every time I close my eyes, I see that ditch. The way the mud pulsed. The hand reaching up. The way the ground seemed to breathe with her. And sometimes I wonder, maybe it wasn't her trap down there. When I started working the night shift at the hospital, I told myself it was just another step toward my medical degree. Everyone said the graveyard shift was quiet, boring, even, but I think about it now, and I realize no one ever told me why it was quiet. I was 23, still new, still eager to prove myself. My job was simple. Record notes during autopsies, log the body IDs, keep everything organized for pathologists who came in during the day. The real work didn't start until midnight, when the halls went silent and the building fell hollow. The first few nights were uneventful. I'd sit in the morgue side office, sipping cold coffee, surrounded by filing cabinets and a humming fluorescent light that made everything look gray. The walls were thick, but the silence there had weight. It pressed down on you. The morgue had 2 stainless steel tables and 8 wall lockers. Each locker had a small window, fogged from the cold. At night, when the ventilation shut off, you could hear the faint clicks of metal contracting. It always sounded like someone moving, small, slow movements. I'd laugh it off, tell myself it was just the cold. On my 4th night, the supervisor told me to start recording the audio logs directly, to make sure nothing was missed when the doctor reviewed cases in the morning. You'll be alone, he said, but you'll get used to it. I didn't. That night, I set up my small digital recorder beside the autopsy table. The red light blinked, steady and slow. I went through the usual notes. ID number, date, time. Tried to sound professional, even though my voice trembled a little. The first body was an older man, heart failure, nothing unusual. But standing there under the bright lights, I could see the faint tremble of my own reflection in the metal tools. When I finished, I turned off the recorder and started to clean up. That's when I heard it. A soft shuffle. It came from behind me, near the lockers. I froze, gloved hands dripping disinfectant. The sound stopped. I listened, heartbeat loud in my ears. Then another sound, faint, almost like a sigh. I turned around slowly. All the locker doors were closed, sealed tight. The temperature gauge blinked steady blue. I stood there for maybe a full minute before forcing myself to laugh. The building was old. The pipes made noise. That's all it was. But when I played the recording back to check my audio, there was something else. It started normal, my voice, the hum of the lights. But halfway through, there was another sound. Soft, low breathing, right behind the microphone. Slow and uneven. I turned the volume up, pressed the speaker to my ear. It wasn't mine. I looked around the room again, tried to convince myself I was overreacting, but that recording haunted me. I even let one of the day nurses listen the next morning. She frowned and said it was probably interference. Happens all the time, she said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. The next night, I came back determined not to let my nerves get to me. Midnight again, empty halls, same hum of lights. I placed the recorder on the table and hit record. The second body was a woman in her 40s. Car accident. I logged everything like usual, describing injuries, cause of death, etc. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. I could hear my own breathing bouncing off the tile. At 12:47 a.m., the power flickered. Just a quick pulse, the lights dimming for a second before stabilizing. I stared up at the ceiling until they stopped buzzing. Then I noticed the recorder's red light wasn't blinking anymore. It was solid, recording but frozen. I reached out to tap it, but the moment my glove brushed it, it went dead. I restarted it, checked the files. Everything before that moment was still there, but at the end of the file, past my last line of dialogue, there was a whisper. "Don't stop." I dropped the recorder. It hit the tile and cracked the corner. I stood there for a long time, staring at it on the floor, that single phrase looping in my head. Don't stop. The next day, I told myself I'd imagined it. Sleep deprivation, stress. Anything but what it sounded like. But when I checked the logs on the computer, I saw something odd. The recorder had continued running for another 10 minutes after I dropped it. And during that time, someone or something had been speaking softly into it. Words I couldn't make out, but the tone, it sounded almost like laughter. By the end of the week, I started hearing small noises even when I wasn't recording. A tap on the table, a feint on behind me. Sometimes I'd catch the reflection of movement in the steel surfaces, but when I turned around, there was nothing there. On the 7th night, I made a mistake. There was a new intake, unidentified male, found near the river. I logged his file, wheeled the gurney in, and began the checklist. But the moment I uncovered his face, my stomach dropped. His eyes were open. That happens sometimes, I know. Muscles tighten, lids shift. But these eyes, they looked aware. Glossy, gray-blue, fixed right on me. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds before forcing myself to continue. I spoke into recorder. Time, date, unidentified male, estimated age 35. But my voice cracked halfway through. And then, faint but clear, I heard again. Breathing. Not in the room, inside the recording. As I spoke, another voice exhaled in sync with me, matching my rhythm. The recorder glitched again. The red light went solid. Then a new voice whispered, "Keep recording." My hand froze. The air in the room felt heavier. I looked down. The man's chest was moving. Barely, just enough to make the sheet rise and fall once. Then again, I stumbled backward, hit the tray behind me, sent instruments crashing to the floor. The sound echoed, sharp and metallic. The movement stopped. The body was still again. I left the recorder running, grabbed my things, and got out. I didn't stop until I was in my car, engine running, breath shaking. When I came back the next morning, broad daylight. People everywhere. I checked the file one last time. It started like all the others. My notes, the shuffle of tools, the usual hum. Then the static kicked in. And through it, a voice. Deeper now, calm, measured. "You shouldn't have left." Then, faintly, beneath the static, came another sound. Wet, rhythmic, like someone breathing through mud. At the very end of the tape, there was silence for almost a full minute. And then a final click, followed by my own voice. Only, it wasn't something I remembered saying. "Case complete," it said. "Time of death, 12:57 a.m. But here's the thing. That's the exact time I ran out of the room. And the recorder, it was still sitting on the table when I left. ChatGPT said, I didn't sleep after that first week. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it. That slow, heavy breathing from the tape. It wasn't just noise. It was alive. I kept telling myself it was interference, maybe feedback in the recorder, but I knew better. I'd worked with those machines before. Static doesn't breathe. Static doesn't follow your rhythm like it's trying to match you. The morgue felt different after that night. The air had weight to it. You could almost taste the cold, metallic bite on your tongue. Every sound, the creak of the vents, the buzz of the fluorescent light, started to sound too human. I thought about quitting, but I needed the job. And part of me, the curious, stupid part, wanted to know if I really caught something on tape. So I brought the recorder back with me the next night. Same time, same room, midnight. The halls were empty, as always. The janitor had already finished mopping. and his radio crackled faintly somewhere near the elevators before going silent. I remember thinking how strange was that even the building seemed to hold its breath after dark. I set the recorder down on the stainless steel table. Pressed record. Autopsy log, March 4th, time 12 a.m. My voice echoed through the speakers, calm, controlled, at least at first. I went through the notes, case number, cause of death, preliminary details. Everything sounded normal, but when I paused to switch gloves, I heard something faint on playback. A soft hiss, then a low exhale. I froze. The sound wasn't coming from my own breathing. It was delayed, almost responding. Testing. I said into the mic, audio check. Another breath followed, just barely audible, like someone trying to whisper back, but without words. I looked around the room. Empty. Always empty. But my skin prickled, like I had just been caught doing something wrong. Who's there? Silence. I picked up the recorder and stopped it. My thumb hovered over the play button for a long time before I finally pressed it. The first few seconds were normal. My voice, the hum of the light. Then came that same inhale, sharp, too close to the mic. Then under it, faint words. I'm still here. It wasn't loud, barely even clear, but I felt those 3 words in my bones. I dropped the recorder. It clattered on the table and rolled off the edge. The sound echoed down the empty hall. I stared at it lying on the floor. The little red light was still blinking, still recording. I didn't pick it up for almost a full minute. When I finally did, my hand was shaking. I played the last few seconds again. The voice, if it even was a voice, was gone. Just a crackle of static, like wind blowing through a tunnel. I shut it off and sat down at the desk. My coffee had gone cold, untouched. I kept staring at the metal lockers on the far wall, those tiny fog windows lined up in perfect rows. For the first time, I wondered what it would feel like to be on the other side of them. The clock on the wall ticked quietly. The sound seemed louder than usual, echoing in my head. Tick, tick, tick. I decided to delete the file. I pressed a button and held it, waiting for that little confirmation beep. But before it finished, the speaker crackled again. This time, the breathing came fast, panicked, and then a voice, quiet, trembling. Don't erase me. I nearly threw the damn thing across the room. I slammed stop, yanked the batteries out, and stuffed it in my locker. I sat there for a long time, trying to steady my breathing. It felt like the room was listening, like the walls themselves were waiting for me to make a sound. After my shift, I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? The few co-workers who worked nights already thought I was too serious, too quiet. The new kid who never talked. So I said nothing. But the next morning, when I went back to log my reports, I noticed something strange in the digital archive. My recordings were automatically uploaded every night into the system. Only this one, the one I tried to delete, had already synced. The file name read, log_124m_unidentified_audio. I clicked it open, expecting silence. Instead, there was my voice again. Calm, steady. But the breathing, it wasn't behind me this time. It was inside my voice, layered beneath every word. When I said, autopsy log, something echoed it back, slightly delayed like a mimic. Autopsy log, the whisper repeated. When I said the date, it repeated that too, word for word. Only one line was different. When I said, end report, the whisper didn't copy me. It said, not yet. I deleted it from the server. Or at least I tried. But the file kept reappearing, copied under different names, hidden in folders I didn't create. By the end of the week, I started hearing that same breathing, even without the recorder. At first, I thought it was a ventilation system, but then I realized it was too close, always right behind my left ear, always the same rhythm. I'd spin around and find nothing, but every time I did, the sound would stop, like whoever it was didn't want to be seen. The more I ignored it, the worse it got. One night, as I was logging paperwork, the office phone rang. It never rang that late. The calls came in only during the day's shift. I picked it up, hand trembling. Hello. Nothing. Just static. Then, through the static, a breath, and that same whisper, "Don't stop." My hand went numb. I hung up and pulled the cord from the wall. I sat there shaking, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. When I looked up, the locker doors on the far wall were fogged. All of them, like something warm had passed by each one. I walked over, step by slow step. The air felt thick, heavy. My breath came out in white clouds. I wiped the glass of the first window. Empty. Then the next. Empty. But the third one, I stopped. Inside was a shape, faint under the white sheet. Normal. Expected. But pressed against the inside of the glass was a handprint. Fresh. I stumbled backward. My shoulder hit the table, knocking over the recorder. The battery cover popped off, and it started playing by itself. Not static this time. A voice. Mine, only slower, warped, and layered beneath it. The whisper again. This time, it wasn't a full sentence. Just one word. Stay. The sound grew louder, overlapping, voices merging, breathing quickening until it filled the room like the walls themselves were exhaling. Then silence. The recorder clicked off. The fog on the lockers faded. Everything was still again. I left it there. Didn't even bother locking up. Now, every night since then, I hear it. That same slow breathing, waiting somewhere between the walls. I stopped recording weeks ago. But sometimes when I walk past a morgue door, I can still hear a faint voice whispering through the crack. And the scariest part? It's my voice. Still talking. Still recording. Even though I haven't pressed record in a long, long time. I never believed in curses. Not ghosts, not demons, none of that. But I believe in footage. Footage doesn't lie. It was the third week of my internship when the hospital went into code black. That's what they call it when the power grid drops and the backup generators take over. It only lasts a few minutes, usually. But that night, it didn't. The lights flickered, then died completely. The air felt heavy, thick with silence. Even the machines, the heart monitors, the fridges, the vent fans, all went still. You don't realize how much noise life makes until it stops. I remember standing in the morgue, one hand still on the gurney, staring at the glow of my phone. The screen light painted my fingers pale blue. It was so quiet I could hear the blood moving in my ears. Then the generator kicked in with a deep hum, and the lights came back, dimmer this time, yellow and uncertain. I exhaled, half laughing to myself. That's when my phone buzzed. It was a message from the night security guard. "Lucas, you down there?" he wrote. I texted back, "Yeah, why?" He didn't answer. Instead, another message came through, a file attachment. The camera feed from the morgue hallway. I opened it, expecting to see myself working or maybe one of the janitors passing by. But the feed was dark, grainy. You could just make out the row of body lockers along the wall. For a second, nothing happened. Then one of the locker doors shifted. Not much, just enough to make the metal catch the light, like it had flexed. I frowned and replayed it, thinking maybe it was a glitch. But when I zoomed in, I saw it clearly. The handle turned slow and deliberate, like someone was inside. Then another locker moved, and another, all the way down the row. I felt my stomach twist. The file stopped there. The playback froze mid-frame. I messaged Lucas back. That's old footage, right? He called me. I could hear the strain in his voice. No, man, that's live. I stared at the lockers across the room. There they were, lined up perfectly. Quiet, still, ordinary. Someone's in there, I said before I even thought about it. Lucas laughed nervously. That's not funny, kid. I already checked the access logs. Nobody opened those since 8. But something in me didn't believe that. The air was colder now. The light buzzed faintly above me. And for the first time, I noticed a faint sound coming from behind the lockers. A rhythmic tap, like knuckles brushing metal. Tap, pause, tap. I walked toward it, my own footsteps echoing too loud. The closer I got, the clearer it became. Not random tapping, but a pattern, like someone was trying to get my attention. I placed my ear against locker number 17. The sound stopped. Then 3 sharp knocks right against the door where my face was. I stumbled back. My breath caught in my throat. Lucas was shouting over the phone now, asking if I heard that. "It's showing up on my feed too," he said. "They're moving again. Dude, get out of there." I turned to leave, but the exit light flickered. The hallway beyond the morgue looked darker than before, a tunnel of black stretching into nothing. I told myself I'd just open one. Just one locker. To prove it was nothing, I reached for the handle of number 17 and pulled. The metal groaned, stiff and reluctant. Cold air spilled out, and a thin fog drifted across the floor. Inside was a body bag. Nothing strange. No movement. But then I noticed something scratched into the inside of the door. For letters, carved deep into the steel. "Help." I slammed it shut and stepped back, heart racing. Lucas was yelling again. "You're not going to believe this. The motion sensors, they're tripping one by one. It's like something's walking down the line of lockers." I looked and I saw it. Not a person, not exactly. Just the ripple of movement, like a shadow bending through air. The locker doors trembled as it passed. The handles quivered, one after another, in perfect rhythm. And then silence. "Lucas?" I whispered. He didn't answer right away. Then his voice came back, trembling. "It's behind you." I turned slowly. There was nothing there, just a reflection of my own face in the stainless steel table. But in that reflection, I saw another face standing just over my shoulder. Pale, wet, its mouth open too wide, like it had been screaming for too long. I spun around, but the space was empty. Only my echo answered back. The emergency lights flickered again, and in those split seconds of dark, I heard something dragging across the floor, a wet, heavy sound. When the lights came on, the locker doors were all open, every single one. Sheets half pulled, name tags swinging. The air smelled like copper and something old. Lucas's voice came to the phone again, but it wasn't his voice anymore. It was deeper, strained, like static pretending to be human. "You open the door." Then nothing. The line cut. The generator hummed louder. The lights dimmed to almost nothing. I ran. I don't even remember leaving the building. Only the sound, that knocking following me down the hall, echoing from somewhere below my feet. By the time I got outside, security and maintenance were already rushing in. The power came back a few minutes later. They found me sitting on the curb, still clutching the recorder I didn't remember grabbing. They reviewed the footage from that night, but when the morgue cameras hit 12:47 a.m., the exact time everything happened, the feed went black. All of it, except for one frame. Locker number 17, slightly open, and a hand, pale and stiff, hanging out from inside. The next day, the hospital called it a system malfunction, said the heat exchange failed, causing condensation and movement, but that doesn't explain the carving on the door, or the fact that the scratches were fresh, sharp-edged, no rust. Lucas didn't come back to work after that night. I heard he quit, moved out of state. I stayed one more week, long enough to pack my things and delete every file that had my name on it. Still, sometimes when I'm half asleep, I swear I hear that same low hum of the generator, and beneath it, the faint click of metal latches opening one by one. I never told anyone what really happened during Code Black, but sometimes when the lights flicker in my apartment, I can see the reflection of those lockers on my TV screen. And every single door is open again. I don't remember pressing record that night. I swear I didn't. But when I got home, the recorder was on my desk, light blinking red, like it had been running for hours. At first, I thought it was just another leftover file from the morgue. I've been avoiding listening to them for weeks, but this one, it was labeled differently. It wasn't dated like the others. No case number, no timestamp, just one word. Me. I stared at that title for a long time. It didn't make sense. I don't label anything like that. It was 3 a.m. My apartment was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that feels alive. I told myself I'd just play a few seconds, enough to confirm it was nothing. So I pressed play. The audio started with static, faint, distant. Then a sound, breathing, slow, heavy, almost waiting. I recognized it instantly. It was me, but something about it was off. It was deeper, rougher, like someone had taken my voice and played it through a dying speaker. Then, after a few seconds, I heard the scrape of metal, the same sound those locker handles made in the morgue. I froze, because this wasn't an old file. This was now. I pressed pause, checked the room. Everything was still. The recorder clicked again, on its own, like someone had hit play. And then I heard it. My voice, calm, flat, like I was reading from a script. Autopsy log. It said, time unknown. Subject myself. My throat went dry. The breathing picked up. Not mine. Theirs. There was a second rhythm under mine. Soft, wet, just behind the mic. I didn't mean to open it. My recorded voice continued. But it knew my name. It called me first. Then came the whisper. Barely audible. Like wind to a grave. Eli, that's my name. I stopped the playback. So fast it skipped. I stared at the recorder, heart hammering. The screen flickered. Static bleeding through the display, like frost spreading across glass. The voice came again, even though the recording had stopped. Eli. I dropped the recorder. It hit the floor, still playing. Now I could hear footsteps, faint, echoing, like someone pacing a long, hollow corridor. A metallic clang, a dragging sound. And under it all, a whispering chorus. They were saying something together, soft and rhythmic. I leaned closer. It wasn't words at first, just sound. But the longer I listened, the clearer it got. They were repeating my name, over and over. Eli, Eli, Eli. I felt cold crawl up my spine. It wasn't just coming from the recorder anymore. It was coming from everywhere. From the vents, from the floorboards, from behind the walls. I grabbed my coat, ready to leave, but when I opened the apartment door, the hallway was black. No light, no sound. Just that whisper, closer now, like they were standing right outside. I slammed the door and backed away. My hand brushed the desk, knocking the recorder to the ground again. The audio cut off with a distorted click. Silence. I waited, breathing hard, trying to listen past the ringing in my ears. Then, from the recorder's tiny speaker, my voice spoke again. You shouldn't have listened, Eli. It wasn't me. It was my voice, but slower, hollow, emptied. I hit stop again. Nothing. I took the batteries out. Still, the red light blinked. I covered it with a towel and sat down on the floor, holding my head in my hands. I thought about calling someone, but who would believe me? I could barely believe myself. I stayed like that until dawn. When the sun finally came up, the recorder was quiet, dead. The light was off. I didn't touch it. I just left it there and went in for my shift. The morgue was colder that morning. When I walked in, the smell hit me first, sharp chemical mixed with something sweet and rotten. The chief pathologist was standing near the far end of the room, flipping through a clipboard. Power cut again last night, he said. Generators kicked on around 2. 2. That was around when I heard the recording. I asked if anyone had been down here during the outage. He said no. Security footage didn't show anyone entering or leaving. But when I turned toward the lockers, I saw it. One of the doors, number 17, was slightly open. Again, I froze. Did you open that? I asked. He frowned. No, it's been sealed for weeks. O case. Young guy. Never identified. I walked closer. My reflection wavered on the metal surface. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. The tag on the handle read, unidentified male. Case closed. My breath fogged the steel as I leaned in, and that's when I noticed something scratched into the surface. Fresh marks, like fingernails. Eli. I stumbled back. My knees went weak. The doctor looked up, confused. You okay? I nodded, though I wasn't. I couldn't be. Later that night, I went home and found a recorder on my bed. Not where I left it. There were no batteries inside. Yet, somehow, The red light was blinking again. I didn't want to play it. I really didn't. But I did. The static came first, like always, then the faint hum of the generator. Then my voice. Autopsy log, it said again. Subject, Eli. Time of death, unknown. The voice broke halfway through. Warped, like someone else was speaking through me. I didn't die here, it said. I'm still here. I dropped the recorder, but the audio didn't stop. The sound filled the whole room, bleeding from the walls, from the vents, from the floorboards. My name came again. Hundreds of voices this time, overlapping, whispering, laughing, breathing. I grabbed the recorder, threw it against the wall. It cracked open, batteries scattering across the floor. But from the shattered speaker, a single sound came through, soft, almost like a sigh. Then my own voice said, calm and distant, Eli, look behind you. I didn't move. I couldn't. My skin crawled, my breath shallow. I just stared at the wall until the sound faded. When I finally turned around, the window was open, and there, in the glass reflection, I saw something standing behind me. It looked like me, but the eyes were wrong. They were black, empty, and smiling. I blinked and it was gone. The next morning, I went back to the hospital. I told them I quit. They didn't argue. I think they were glad to see me go. But before I left, I had to pass the security office. Lucas wasn't there, of course. He'd been gone since Code Black. I looked at the monitor screens one last time. They were looping through the morgue feeds. Everything looked normal, until the last one, locker number 17, slightly open, and for a moment, I saw movement, the reflection of a man standing right behind the camera. He looked up as if he knew I was watching, and even through the static, I could hear him whisper my name, Eli. The screen went dark. I never went back. Now, weeks later, I still can't sleep. I still hear the breathing at night, slow and steady. Sometimes, I wake up and find the recorder on my nightstand, even though I threw it away. And sometimes when I speak, I hear something wrong in my own voice. Something deeper, slower, like something else is speaking with me. I've stopped trying to explain it, because I know now what that voice on the tape really was. It wasn't calling to me. It was becoming me. I remember that night clear as day. August 14th, 1997. The air was heavy with rain, the kind that doesn't fall yet. It just hangs, waiting. I was the only one left in the Pine Hollow Sheriff's outpost, sipping stale coffee and listening to the hum of the radio. Around 11:45, the call came through. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I need assistance at static. Then again, fainter this time. Mile marker, 13-somethings, and silence. I leaned in, tapping the side of the radio. Unit 12, repeat, you're breaking up. Nothing but static. The voice belonged to Deputy Frank Keller. He was new, only 6 months into the job. Good kid, polite, quiet, always early. He'd been patrolling the old ridge road that cut through the forest between Pine Hollow and Mason Creek. The one locals called Black Hollow Road. Most folks avoided it after dark. Too many blind turns, too many stories. I tried calling him again. Still nothing. The frequency was clear. No chatter, no interference. Just gone. By midnight, I decided to check it out myself. Protocol said to wait, but I couldn't. Not when a deputy went dark that close to the ridge. I took Unit 9 and Old Crown Vic and started up the mountain road. The rain finally broke, coming down in thin, slanting lines. My headlights cut through the fog like weak flashlights, barely reaching past the hood. The road climbed higher and tighter, the trees closing in. I kept the radio on, hoping for any sign of Frank. Every few miles, I tried again. Unit 12, do you copy? Static. Dispatch. This is Unit 9, en route to Keller's last location. Static. Even dispatch had gone silent. By the time I reached mile marker 10, the storm hit full force. Rain hammered the windshield, thunder rolling through the hills. Then I saw it, something shining on the shoulder, a side mirror, bent, cracked. I pulled over and killed the siren. My flashlight beam swept through the dark, The road was empty, slick with mud, but there were tracks, fresh ones. I followed them about 20 yards before they just stopped. No sign of the car, no skid marks, just an empty stretch of road fading into fog. That's when I heard it, faint through the rain, like a whisper through a tunnel. Unit 9. It was Frank's voice. "Frank, is that you?" Static answered. Then quieter, "Don't follow it." The signal cut out. The hair on my neck stood straight. The voice wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was coming from my walkie, the one clipped to my vest. But I hadn't touched it. I switched the channel, called dispatch again. No response. The device just hissed like it was breathing. Something moved in the trees beside me. I swung the flashlight, but the beam hit nothing but branches. Still, I could feel it. That heavy, watching stillness that only happens right before something steps into view. I didn't wait to find out what. I got back in the cruiser, locked the doors, and turned the key. The engine struggled once, twice, then caught. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The fog behind me looked thicker somehow, darker, like the road was swallowing the light. And in that last flicker of red brake glow, I saw it. A shadow standing dead center of the road. Tall, still, and wearing a deputy's hat. I went back the next morning with the search team. The storm had passed, leaving everything slick and shining under pale light. Frank's car was still missing. We split up, checking ditches, pull-offs, even old logging trails. Nothing. But when we reached mile marker 13, something fell off. The asphalt had curved around a ravine, deep, narrow, choked with pines. The guardrail had rusted through years ago, and the marker itself leaned at an angle, carved with initials from decades past. I stepped out and looked down into the ravine. It was quiet, too quiet. Then my radio crackled. "Unit 9, you got eyes on a marker?" It was dispatch. "Yeah," I said, relief flooding through me. "I'm at 13 now." "Copy that. Wait for backup there." "Copy." I clipped the radio back, turned around, and froze. The road behind me was gone. Well, not gone exactly. It just changed. The curve I just walked looked different. The trees had shifted, like someone rearranged them while I blinked. I jogged back toward the car, but the road stretched on longer than it should have been. No sign of the others. "Dispatch, this is Unit 9. I think I'm..." Static. Then, "Mile marker 13. I turned back toward the post. The metal number glinted in the light. Only now, there were two of them, one on each side of the road. I felt dizzy. The air felt thinner up there, like breathing through a straw. I kept walking, hoping to find the others. But no matter how far I went, I passed the same damn thing. That same bent mile marker, that same stretch of cracked asphalt, that same curve. Mile marker 13. Over and over again. It was like being stuck in a photograph. The radio flared again. Faint voices, like from far away. I caught bits and pieces. "See him? Still walking? Don't tell him." Then my name. Ray. Frank's voice. I spun around, scanning the tree line. "Frank? Where are you?" No answer. Just wind through wet leaves. Then I saw something ahead. A shape by the marker. A man in uniform. Relief hit me like a wave. I started running, shouting, "Frank! Frank, thank God." He didn't move. When I got closer, I stopped cold. It wasn't Frank. The man's uniform was torn, faded like it had been there for years. The badge was from an older design, the kind our department stopped using in the 70s. His skin was pale, paper-thin, and his face, it was wrong, like it was too still. He turned toward me, slow as a clock hand. His lips didn't move, but I heard him clear as day. "You shouldn't have come alone." The voice came from the radio on my shoulder. I stumbled back, fumbling for the pistol at my side, but the man just faded. The fog thickened, swallowing the trees, the road, everything. When it cleared, I was standing by my car again. The engine was still idling. The mile marker stood where it always had, alone on the bend, and carved beneath the number was something new. Unit 9. A week later, the search was officially called off. They never found Frank, never found the car, never found me on the department's radio logs that night, either. I kept quiet about what really happened. What could I even say? That the mountain swallowed a road? That I heard my own name coming through dead channels? But then, 3 days after the search ended, the county tech team recovered the dashcam audio from Frank's patrol car. The footage was useless. Static, fog, sometimes flashes of trees. But the audio, that was different. The sheriff asked me to sit in while they played it. We were in the station's basement, the hum of the old reel player echoing off the concrete walls. At first, it was just road noise. Tires, rain, wind. Then came the call. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I need assistance at mile marker 13. Silence. Then, there's something in the road. A pause. Then, faintly, the sound of someone crying. A woman. The sheriff frowned. He was alone that night. I said nothing. The crying grew louder. Deep shaking sobs. Frank's voice came back, trembling. Ma'am, are you hurt? Do you need? The woman's crying stopped. Then, through the speaker, soft broken, came a voice that made my blood freeze. It said my name. Ray. Frank gasped. How do you know? Static. Then the sound of the car door opening. Wind. Footsteps. The rustle of wet leaves. And then a whisper right against the mic. Come back. The sheriff stopped the tape there. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, he said, that voice at the end. You recognize it? I lied. I said no, but I did. It was me. Not my tone now, but how I used the sound before that night, before the road changed me. The sheriff sent the tape to the state office. But a few days later, he called to tell me something strange. The file corrupted. All copies. Gone. That night, my home phone rang around 2 a.m. The line was full of static. Then a faint voice came through. Mine again. Unit 9, come back to the ridge. Click. Deadline. I didn't sleep. I just sat there, staring at the badge on my desk. The one that used to mean something. At dawn, I drove back up the mountain. The fog was waiting for me like it had been all along. When I reached mile marker 13, I stopped. The post was still there. Only now, there were 2 patrol cars parked beside it, both covered in dust and pine needles. One was Frank's. The other was mine. The doors hung open. Radio still hissing. And through the static, I heard it again. A woman crying. Then my own voice. Autopsy log. It said, faint and broken. Subject, myself. The sound looped over and over until I couldn't tell which voice was mine anymore. I turned to leave, but the road behind me had vanished into the fog. All that remained was the sound of a single transmission crackling through the radio. Unit 12 to dispatch, requesting backup. Mile marker 13. A pause. Then another voice, mine again. Copy that. On my way. I used to work the night shift at the county dispatch center. Graveyard hours, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The room was small, lined with flickering monitors and old rotary backup phones that should have been replaced years ago. I liked the quiet of it. Most nights, the only sounds were the hum of the air unit and the occasional call about a deer in the road or a drunk driver heading home too fast. March 17, 2004. That's the night I stopped liking the quiet. The first call came in at 2:13 a.m. The number flashed across my screen as unknown origin. Normally, that means it's coming from a landline without caller ID. But when I traced it through the system, the log said disconnected. That happens sometimes. Old account. Inactive line still sitting the grid. But this one, it rang clean. County dispatch, what's your emergency? No answer. I listened. There was breathing. Slow. Uneven. Like whoever was had just run a long way. I said again, hello? This is dispatch. Are you hurt? The breathing hitched, then cut off. Silence. I waited another few seconds. Then the line went dead. I logged it, shrugged it off, and went back to my coffee. Calls like that happen more often than you'd think. Static. Hang-ups, wrong numbers, part of the job. But 10 minutes later, it rang again. Same number. County dispatch. The same breathing, this time softer. Listen, if you're in danger, I need you to tell me where you are. Can you speak? Nothing, just that faint, wet sound of someone exhaling too close to the receiver. Then, right before the line cut out, a whisper. I couldn't make it out. Maybe a name. Maybe mine. I replayed the recording twice. The system saves all incoming audio by default, and when I scrubbed back to the waveform, I heard it again, faint, buried in the static. Help, that's what it sounded like. I tried calling the number back, but it wouldn't connect. Said the line didn't exist. By the time I logged the second call, I noticed something strange. The timestamp on the first entry had changed. It now read 2:13 a.m., but the seconds field, the last two digits, were slowly ticking backward. 49, 48, 47. I thought it was a glitch. I even reset the monitor. Didn't help. At 2:27, it rang again. I almost didn't answer this time. Dispatch, I said, my voice low, but it wasn't breathing anymore. It was crying. A woman's voice, broken and small, coming through the line like she was trapped inside the wire itself. Ma'am, I said quickly. Ma'am, what's your location? The crying stopped. A pause. Then a voice, quiet, like a secret. He's here. That's all she said before the call dropped. I froze, checked the caller log again. Same number, still marked disconnected. I called the sheriff on duty, told him I might have a domestic call with a bad connection. He said he'd send a car to sweep the area, but I couldn't even tell him where to start. After that, I kept the line open. Every few minutes, I replayed the last recording. Each time I did, it changed. The same clip, but the background noise shifted. Like the space she was in was getting smaller. The crying got closer. By 3:01 a.m., I stopped touching the phone. I just stared at the red light, waiting for it to ring again. And it did. This time, when I picked up, I didn't say anything. I just listened. Static. Then, faintly, my own voice. County dispatch, what's your emergency? It was me. The exact tone, the same inflection. A playback from maybe 15 minutes earlier. I sat there frozen, listening to my own words echo back at me, looping over the sound of slow, heavy breathing. Then, after about 20 seconds, a new voice joined in. Male, deep flat, too close to the mic. He said, stop answering. The line went dead. I swear to God I unplugged the phone, pulled the cord straight from the wall. I even checked the fuse box in the corner. Everything was fine. The light on the console still glowed red. At 3:12, it rang again. I didn't pick up this time. I just sat there, watching the seconds blink by on the timestamp. Each ticked slower than the last. Then, without me touching it, the speaker clicked on, the line went live. Static poured out into the room. Then the breathing again. And then, faintly, the same woman's voice whispered, "He's behind you." I spun around. No one was there. The hallway light outside the dispatch room flickered. But that was it. The building was empty. It always was during my shift. The line went silent again, and for a long time I just sat there, trying to catch my breath. My hand was shaking. I started writing the incident report, trying to make sense of it. Maybe a prank call. Maybe a recording fed through a disconnected line. There had to be a technical explanation. I typed up the first paragraph, looked up at the clock. 3:33 a.m. The radio scanner next to me buzzed, a faint burst of static, then a voice I didn't recognize. It wasn't from any local channel. All units, respond. Mile marker 9. Single vehicle crash. Possible fatal. Then the line died again. I checked the log. No such call had gone out. I looked out the window toward the highway. From the tower, you could see a stretch of the ridge road below. Just empty black, rain glinting off asphalt. And then a flash. Headlights, flickering in and out like a bad film reel. I tried to radio the sheriff. Control to Unit 4, do you copy? Nothing. The radio crackled, hissed, then finally spoke. A voice, low and familiar. Stop answering. I grabbed my jacket, ready to walk out, but the door wouldn't budge. The electronic lock blinked red. Then the line rang again. I stared at it for a long time. When I finally picked up, the voice on the other end was whisper my name, over and over. Ellen, soft, broken, almost loving. It took me a second to realize it wasn't a woman's voice anymore. It was mine. The call ended with a click. When the sheriff came in at 6 a.m., I was still sitting there, staring at the dead phone. The storm had passed. Everything looked normal again. But when they checked the recordings, all of them were blank. Not corrupted, blank. Like the line had never been used. All except for one. At exactly 2:13 a.m., there's a 3-second clip saved under unknown. You can hear static, a faint breath. Then, right before it cuts, my voice saying, "County Dispatch, what's your emergency?" And underneath it, another whisper. The same voice, repeating it back. "County Dispatch, what's your emergency?" The system shouldn't have been able to record over itself like that. It was analog, hardwired. But the next night, when the new dispatcher came in, the phone rang again. Same time, same number. And this time, when he picked up, the voice on the other end said something new. It said, "Ellen's gone." And then the line went quiet. I didn't go back to work right away. After that night, the calls, the voice, the number that shouldn't have existed, I told myself I needed a break. Just a few days to clear my head. But dispatch doesn't stop for ghosts. People still crash their cars, still go missing in the dark. So, the following week, I clocked back in. I told myself it had all been static. A bad wire, some freak weather interference. For a while it worked. The first 2 nights were normal, quiet, routine. But by the third, I noticed something wrong with the recordings. We archived every call into the system. Each one is stamped with a date and time, then backed up on a separate server. When I went to review last week's log, just to prove to myself it was all in my head, I saw a new entry, one that wasn't supposed to exist. File name, call _03170 for _line 1 _final. The timestamp said 2:13 a.m. same minute as the first call. The system said the audio was locked by admin access, except I'm the only one with admin clearance. I hesitated for a long time before pressing play. The first thing I heard was silence. Not the kind of silence you get from an empty room, but the deep, heavy kind that hums inside your ears. Then static, faint at first, like wind pressing through a wire. Then my voice. "County Dispatch, what's your emergency?" I froze. It wasn't a playback from the old tape. It was different. I sounded exhausted, shaky, like I'd been crying. I let the clip run. "County Dispatch, what's your emergency?" No response, just breathing. Then, after a long pause, I said, "Please, somebody help me." The words were cracked, desperate, like I was whispering through tears. I don't remember ever saying that. The recording continued for another 30 seconds. You can hear me sobbing quietly, the faint sound of static underneath. Then, clear as day, another voice cuts through. Male, slow. "She's not yours anymore." Then the line goes dead. I must have sat there for 20 minutes, staring at the screen. The air in that little room felt thick, heavy, like the walls were pressing closer. I checked the security feed from that night, but the camera above the dispatch desk was blacked out from 2:10 to 2:15. Just 5 minutes of total void. No image, no sound. That's when I realized something even worse. The system had labeled the file as final transmission. I tried deleting it. The command didn't work. Tried again. Nothing. Then, right as I was about to unplug the terminal, the phone rang. Line 1. I didn't want to answer it. My hand hovered over the receiver. But something inside me said don't. The light blinked twice, then stayed solid red. That meant the line had gone active. Someone or something was already on the other end. So I picked up. "County Dispatch," I said quietly. Static, then breathing. My heart started pounding. "Who is this?" More static. Then a voice, soft, distant. "Ellen." It said my name like it knew me. I felt a chill crawl down my neck. "Who is this?" I asked again, louder this time. The voice didn't answer. Instead, I heard something else in the background. Not words, more like shuffling, metal scraping on tile. It sounded like the dispatch room. I looked around. The lights flickered once. Then, through the receiver, I heard myself speak. "Ellen, don't hang up." It was my voice. I dropped the phone. It hit the counter. Still live, my voice coming through the static. "Please," it said again. "Don't hang up. He's here." The line started hissing, like feedback from an old radio. Underneath the noise, something heavy dragged across the floor. A thud, then another. I grabbed the receiver again, my hand shaking. "What are you?" I shouted. There was a pause. Then a whisper, so close it felt like it was right against my ear. "You." The line clicked, and everything went silent. I sat there, listening to my own breathing, waiting for something else to happen. But nothing did. When I looked back at the console, line 1's light was still on, steady red. The line shouldn't have been active. I'd ended the call. I pulled the plug from the wall. The light stayed on. Then, faintly, through the unplugged receiver, my voice spoke again. "Ellen, help me." This time it wasn't calm. It was broken, panicked, like someone was choking the words out. I dropped the receiver again. It kept talking. "He's in the room." The lights above me dimmed, one by one, until only the console screen glowed. I don't know how long I sat there before the sound stopped. The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking. When morning came, I told the sheriff there had been interference again. He nodded, half listening, probably thinking I was overworked. He said he'd get IT to check the logs. But that night, when I came back for my next shift, the phone lines were already blinking. Line 1, line 2, line 3. All red, all active. Every call Idaho was the same disconnected number. I muted the console, sat there, staring. Then, one by one, each light started going dark, until only line 1 stayed lit. I don't know what made me do it, but I pressed play on the recording queue again. There was a new file, dated just a few minutes before I arrived. File name, line 1 underscore call underscore and underscore progress. I opened it. The recording was me, again, but not from before. It was current. I could hear myself walking through the dispatch center. The same echo, the same chair creak. Then I spoke. "Is anyone here?" That's what I said out loud, at the exact same moment. The recording was happening before I did it, like it was predicting me. I froze, staring at the monitor. The audio continued. "Don't turn around," it said. That wasn't me anymore. The voice was deeper, broken, like my throat had filled with gravel. Then came the sound of a door creaking open on the recording, and in the same second, the door behind me opened. I didn't look. I couldn't. I just sat there, shaking, as the voice in the recording whispered something else. Something so soft I could barely hear it. "It's wearing your voice now." The line went dead. I turned around, finally, slowly. The hallway behind me was empty, but my reflection in the glass window wasn't. It was still sitting there in the chair, looking straight ahead, headset on, mouth moving like it was still talking. I took a step closer. My reflection blinked and smiled. That's when the phone rang again. Line 1. I picked it up without thinking. County Dispatch. And before I could finish, my voice on the other end spoke first. "Ellen, he's right behind you." Click. Silence. The line went dead again. When the sheriff reviewed the logs the next morning, all he found were blank entries. No calls, no recordings, no timestamps. But the system showed one outgoing line at 2:13 a.m. The destination? My home number. Except my home phone hadn't worked in months. I'd unplugged it after my husband passed. They said I must have misheard. Overworked. Hallucinating. Maybe I am. Because last night when I came home, the landline was plugged back in. The light on the receiver was blinking red. I played the voicemail. It was my voice. Crying. Whispering. "Please," it said, "don't answer line 1. They say the lake was built over a town. That's what everyone around here says. Anyway, a few old-timers still call it Ashford Hollow. like it never really went away, just sank. When I joined the county search and recovery team, I thought it was just a story, something they told the new guy to mess with him. But after that summer, I don't laugh about it anymore. The call came in on a Sunday morning. A teenager had gone missing overnight, 16, maybe 17. His friends said they'd been drinking by the reservoir, cliff jumping after dark. He'd gone in but never came back up. By noon, we had the boats out. I remember the sun burning off the fog, turning the water into this blinding mirror that hurt to look at. You couldn't see a thing below the surface, just black glass. We dropped sonar first. You get used to the quiet hum of the machine, the faint lines that tell you whether there's something under there, rocks, debris, sometimes bodies. But what showed up on that screen wasn't like anything I'd seen before. There was structure, angles, straight lines. At first, I thought it was just old construction debris from when they built the dam. But as we moved closer, the outline sharpened, tall, narrow, with a pointed top. It looked like a steeple. I remember leaning over the boat, peering into the water, half expecting to see nothing. But the deeper we looked, the darker it got. The sunlight just stopped at a certain point, swallowed by all that depth. We marked the coordinates and prepped for the dive. The water was colder than usual, the kind of cold that bites through your gloves and fills your chest like ice. Visibility was maybe 10 feet at best, but I could feel the shape of something massive below us, a pressure like we were swimming above a buried giant. We descended slow, around 40 feet down. The ground leveled out into what used to be a street. You could tell by the way the stones were laid, the straight patterns disappearing into the silt. That's when I saw it. The steeple. It rose out of the silt like a bone, pale and jagged, the tip of it broken but still reaching upward. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was real, a church, half buried in the black water. We hovered there, flashlights sweeping across the structure. The wood was rotted, eaten away by time, but you could still see carvings in the frame. Symbols, maybe. I remember tracing one with my glove, a spiral that looped inward, almost hypnotic. Our comms crackled in my ear. Anything? My partner, Drew, asked. Just old buildings, I said. There's something down here, but not him. We kept searching. The floor of the reservoir was like a graveyard. Fences, foundations, parts of a town swallowed whole. A sunken memory. Then Drew's light caught something ahead. A shape floating near the steeple. It looked like fabric at first. Pale, tangled in the weeds. But when we got closer, it wasn't fabric. It was skin. We found the boy. He was suspended upright, like he was standing on the lake bed, arms loose at his sides. His face was pale, eyes open, and his feet were buried in the silt, like he'd been planted there. We bagged him and called it in. But as we started to ascend, my radio crackled again. Except this time, it wasn't Drew. It was a woman's voice. Soft, muffled, like it was coming through water. Don't wake them. I froze mid-ascent, looked around. Nothing but blackness. Drew, did you hear that? He didn't answer. The voice came again, closer this time, right beside me. They're still praying. My chest went tight. I kicked upward fast, not caring about the protocol. I just needed air. When we surfaced, I ripped the mask off and gasped like I'd been holding my breath for hours. Drew popped up beside me, yelling something, but I barely heard him. We loaded the body onto the boat and started back. The sun was setting behind the ridge, painting the water red. And for a second, I thought I saw something else breaking the surface. A roof, maybe, or the tip of another building. But when I blinked, it was gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that church, the carvings, the boy's body floating upright, like he was waiting for something. At around 3 a.m., I went back to the station to check the dive footage. The camera feed was clean for the first few minutes, just silt and murky light. Then, when the steeple came into view, something changed. The audio went strange. You could hear breathing that wasn't ours. And beneath it, a low humming, almost like singing. It got louder when Drew moved the light across the church doors. The beam hit a cross carved into the wood, and for half a second, the camera flickered, showing not water, but a dark hallway, dry, Empty. Then it snapped back. I rewound the tape 5 times. Same thing every time. When Drew came the next morning, I showed him. He stared at the screen for a while, silent. Then he said, "We don't talk about this, okay? Just file it and move on." He was shaking. We turned the footage over to the sheriff. A week later, it was gone from the system. No record, no copy. But that wasn't the end of it. A few days later, they drained part of the reservoir to inspect the dam. I drove up there on my day off just to see for myself. The water line had dropped low enough that you could see the top of the church now, the steeple poking out like a finger through the mud. There were people standing near it, not workers, just people. They were arranged in a half circle around the steeple, motionless, staring down at it. From where I stood on the ridge, I couldn't make out their faces. Then one of them looked up. Even from that distance, I swear I could tell she was smiling. Something about her face felt wrong, stretched, almost. I blinked, and the group was gone. No footprints in the mud. No sign anyone had been there. I didn't go back after that. I put in for a reassignment to another county. But sometimes, late at night, when the power lines hum and the air feels heavy before a storm, I still hear that voice in the back of my head. They're still praying. And every year, when the water level drops, locals find strange things along the shore. Crosses made of driftwood, scraps of pews, even an old bell that washed up near the dam. But last week, one of the fishermen said he pulled something up tangled in his net, a piece of a window frame, with stained glass still in it. He said the glass showed a woman, dressed in white, standing at the edge of a lake. Her hands were clasped like she was praying, and the face, he swore it was mine. The storm that night came down like punishment. You couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. The kind of rain that turns headlights into useless white fog. The radio was hissing in the background, half static, half weather warnings. I was halfway through my shift, sipping cold coffee from a paper cup, when dispatch crackled through. Unit 12, respond to stalled vehicle. Highway 37, just past mile marker 51. It was 2:17 a.m. I remember that because the clock on my dash was a few minutes fast, and I'd been meaning to fix it for weeks. The dispatcher sounded off that night. Her voice had this slow drag to it, like she was talking through water. I didn't think much of it. Nobody likes working nights, especially when the whole county's drowning under rain. When I turned off the main road, the forest swallowed me. The wipers were fighting to keep up, but the rain was too heavy, too constant. My headlights caught pieces of mist and branches, the world flashing in broken images. I rolled down my window for a second to listen, thinking maybe I'd hear the sound of an engine or someone honking, but there was only the storm. Then I saw it, a car, pulled off on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking faint red through the downpour. It looked old, late 70s, maybe early 80s. Paint so faded it was hard to tell the color. I parked behind it, radioed in that I'd found the vehicle. No answer, just static. I tried again. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I've got eyes on the car. Gonna check it out. The radio hissed, then went dead. I figured the weather had knocked the signal out. Happens all the time in the hills. So I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. The rain hit like needles. The beam from the light barely made it past the hood. The car door on the driver's side was open a few inches, swaying gently with the wind. County sheriff. I yelled over the storm. Anyone in there? No answer. I edged closer, shining the light inside. The seats were soaked. The keys were still dangling from the ignition, but the car was empty. There were footprints, bare feet leading away from the car and into the trees. I don't know why, but the sight of those prints hit me harder than it should have. Something about them looked deliberate, like whoever made them wasn't running, just walking slow. The rain was washing them away by the second, but I could still make out the shape. Small, narrow, maybe a man, maybe not. I called out again. Hey, you okay out there? The wind answered. I should have gone back to the car, called for backup, waited it out. But something in me didn't want to leave. It's like that sometimes when you're on duty, You get this gut feeling that if you walk away, you'll regret it forever. So I followed the prints. The trees bent low with the way of the storm, creaking like old doors. My boot sank into mud, the light trembling in my hand. Then, somewhere up ahead, I saw movement. A shadow just off the beam of my flashlight, standing between the trees. I froze. The rain pounded in my ears, masking everything else. "Sir," I called. "You need help?" Nothing. The figure didn't move, didn't run, just stood there, facing me. For a moment, lightning ripped across the sky, and in that split-second white light, I saw his face. Or, at least, what looked like one. It was pale, stretched too long, the features blurred like something half-remembered, and the eyes, they caught the light wrong. No color, just reflection. Then it was dark again. When I flicked my flashlight up, he was gone. I stood there for a full minute, listening to the storm, heart beating hard enough to make me dizzy. When I finally turned back toward the road, the car was gone. I don't mean it had been moved. I mean it wasn't there anymore. The shoulder was empty. No tire marks. No broken glass. No sign it had ever been there at all. Just my cruiser sitting alone with its lights, cutting through the rain. I ran back, mud sucking at my boots, climbed inside and slammed the door shut, breathing like I'd been chased. The radio suddenly came alive with a burst of static. Unit 12 respond. It was dispatch again, but the voice didn't sound like the woman from earlier. This voice was deeper, slower. "You shouldn't have followed him." Then silence. I drove straight back to the station, rain still coming down hard. When I got there, I told the night sergeant what happened. He looked at me like I'd lost it. Said the only call they'd logged that night was a noise complaint 2 counties over. No dispatch about Highway 37. He even pulled the record. No mention of me being assigned anything at 217. The next day, I drove back to that stretch of road in daylight. Dry as bone now, the storm long gone. I found mile marker 51 easily enough, but the shoulder looked different. The gravel was fresh, like the ground had been dug up and replaced. And there, at the edge of the ditch, something caught the sun, a piece of chrome. I brushed the dirt away, and my stomach dropped. It was a car emblem, the same make and model I'd seen the night before. I turned it over. The back was scratched, like it had been pried off with a knife. That's when I noticed something else beside it. Half buried in the mud was a small metal tag. A license plate screw still attached. The letters were almost gone from rust, but I could still read the last 2 numbers, 37. I pocketed it before anyone else saw. A week later, I drove that highway again, this time on routine patrol. Nothing looked unusual, but every time I passed mile marker 51, the radio would crackle just for a second, like someone trying to speak. I stopped going out there at night, but then a few months later, we got another report. Same stretch of road, same mile marker. Another car stalled during a storm. This time, I didn't respond. I let another unit take it. They found nothing. No car, no driver, no footprints. Just a puddle on the shoulder that wouldn't dry, even days after the rain. The rookie on that call swore he saw something in it. His reflection, but wrong. Staring back at him with a different expression. He quit a week later. It's been years now, but I still drive that way sometimes. Old habits die hard. Every time the clouds start to roll in, I feel that same weight in my chest, like the air is thicker there, like it's waiting. I've seen wrecks, fires, drownings, you name it, but nothing unsettled me the way that night did, because deep down I know what I saw, and I know that car didn't just disappear. Sometimes, when the rain hits just right, I hear the echo of hazard lights blinking through the static on my radio. And sometimes, if I listen close enough, I hear my own voice calling for help. It started 3 nights after the divers came up with nothing. They'd been looking for that missing kid. 15 years old, when swimming with friends, never came back up. The local sheriff shut down the search after the sonar showed nothing but rocks and silt. Folks around here said the lake took him. They said it takes one every few years. The first night it happened, I thought I was dreaming. It was around midnight when I woke up to this low, distant ringing, Soft, slow, not like the wind chimes on my porch. This was deeper, like metal echoing underwater. A single bell, tolling once every few seconds. At first, I thought it might be the old church down by the ruins of the town, before it got flooded back in the 60s. They said when they built the dam, the whole place went under. The steeple, the houses, everything. Some of the older folks still call that area Old Mercy. But there's no church there anymore. Nothing but the reservoir. I lay there in bed, listening. It came and went with the wind, fading in and out. It didn't sound close, but it didn't sound far either. By morning, I figured it was just a dream. But then at breakfast, my neighbor Earl mentioned it. He said he heard it too, sometime after midnight. His dogs had gone crazy, barking at the lake like they smelled something. By the end of the week, half the town was talking about it. People said the sound came from the water. Some claimed they could feel the vibration through their floors, like the ground was humming. The sheriff told us it was just pipes expanding or a buoy chain knocking against the dam. But even he didn't sound sure. Then one night, I decided to go down there myself. It was around 11 when I parked by the overlook. The air was still, not a ripple on the surface of the reservoir, just a faint mist hanging low, turning the water silver under the moonlight. I cut the engine and sat there, windows down, waiting. For a while, nothing, just crickets and the occasional splash from a fish breaking the surface. Then it started again. That bell, deep, hollow, slow, it rolled up from the water like a heartbeat. I could feel it in my chest. I stepped out of the car and walked down the dirt path to the shore. The sound grew louder, clearer, as if it were rising toward me. One toll, pause, another toll. Each one seemed a little closer. I remember thinking, bells don't sound like that underwater. Not that clearly. When I reached the edge, I saw something that made my stomach twist. There were ripples spreading across the surface in perfect circles. No wind, no rain, just a pattern, like something large was moving deep below. The air smelled like old iron and wet stone. Then I saw light, faint and golden, flickering far below, like candles burning at the bottom of the lake. They shimmered in the black water for only a moment, then vanished. That was enough for me. I went home, locked every door, and didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was headlights from a boat or something. But when I drove past the lake later that day, there were no boats. The docks were empty. A few nights later, I woke again. This time, it wasn't the bell that woke me, it was the silence. No wind, no insects, just still air pressing against the house. Then the dogs down the road started barking one by one, and the bell rang, louder than before. It sounded closer, clearer, like it was coming from the woods behind my property instead of the lake. Then, through the trees, I saw light again, soft, golden, flickering. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside, even though every instinct told me not to. The woods were damp and cold. Each step sank into the earth with a wet sound. I followed the glow, heart pounding, until I reached the old fence line near the reservoir's edge. That's when I saw it. The mist had rolled in thick, but through it I could make out a shape, something tall, rising out of the water. It was a spire, a steeple, the church steeple, half submerged, its cross barely visible above the fog. The bell rang again, shaking the air around me. The sound didn't come from above, though. It came from below, from the dark water beneath the steeple. And then I heard something else. A voice, faint, distant, echoing under the surface. It was singing, a hymn, one I hadn't heard since I was a kid. Nearer, my God, to thee. The tune twisted in the wind, distorted but familiar. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my light. The singing grew louder, more voices joining in, all muffled by the water. Then the surface began to move. The ripples spread again, faster this time, reaching the shoreline where I stood. The ground under me shivered, soft mud trembling like something alive beneath it. And I swear, just for a second, I saw a hand, pale and thin, rising through the ripples before sinking back down. That was it for me. I ran. By the time I got back to my porch, the bell had stopped. The night sounds came back all at once. Crickets, wind, the hum of the trees. Like the world had just taken a breath it had been holding. The next morning, I told Earl what I saw. He just stared at me, pale as milk, said he dreamed of the same thing, a church, half underwater, with bells that rang when the lake wanted something. A few days later, the water level dropped from maintenance work on the dam, and there it was, the steeple, half buried in mud, the cross still standing. The divers went down again to check for structural damage. But when they came up, they didn't talk. They just packed up and left, refusing to answer questions. One of them quit the team the next day. I went back that evening, just to see it for myself in daylight. The steeple was black with algae. The bell rusted through. But when the wind passed through the empty frame, it rang, softly, perfectly, as if it had never stopped. And when I leaned closer, I noticed something carved into the wood near the base. Letters, half washed away by the water. Deliver us. That night, the rain came again, and with it the bells. Only this time, the sound didn't fade when morning came. It echoed faintly all day long, no matter how far I drove from the reservoir. Sometimes even now, when the air is still and the world goes quiet, I hear it again, just one toll, low and hollow, like a memory calling from under the surface. I moved away last year, but it followed me somehow. Last week, I woke up in my new apartment, 100 miles from that lake, and there it was again, soft and distant, ringing through the floorboards. I pressed my ear to ground, and underneath everything, I swear I heard the same hymn. Nearer, my God, to thee. The voice was mine this time, and the bell didn't stop. I still remember the look on Daniel's face when he came out of the water that morning. He didn't say a word, just dropped his gear, stared at the lake, and started shaking. We thought it was the cold at first. The water in Mercy Reservoir is always freezing, even in summer. But it wasn't the cold. It was what he saw down there. Daniel was one of the divers the county hired after the bells started ringing again. They said it was to inspect the old structures under the surface. Maybe close off any collapsed shafts that could cause pressure changes. But everyone in town knew the real reason. The church, the one they found last month. I wasn't part of the team officially, but Daniel and I went to school together. He called me the night before the dive and said he wanted me to record the job, just in case something went wrong. I thought he meant for insurance. He meant something else. That morning was gray and windless. The water looked like glass, dark and heavy. There were 4 of them, Daniel, 2 techs from the dam project, and a rookie diver who couldn't have been older than 20. They dropped in one by one, air tanks hissing, bubbles breaking the surface before disappearing into nothing. For the first few minutes, everything was normal. I could see their movement on the monitor, the green outlines flickering on the sonar feed. The camera light cut through the dark water in a narrow cone, showing bits of silt and long strand of algae drifting like old hair. Then the shape came into view. At first, it was just a line, vertical, solid, cutting through the gloom. Then another beside it. Then the roof line appeared, half buried in the mud. The church. Even on the screen, it didn't look real. The steeple leaned slightly, covered in black weeds. The windows were broken, but the stained glass was still there in patches, reds and blues flashing whenever the light passed over. Going inside, Daniel said to the radio. His voice cracked with static. The others followed. Their flashlights swung through the water, catching bits of floating debris. When they reached the doorway, Daniel hesitated. You could see it in the footage. His light stopped moving, the beam hovering over the threshold. Something wrong, one of the techs asked. Daniel didn't answer. The door frame was covered in silt, but carved letters were still visible across the top. Baptism shall cleanse thee. The rookie diver laughed nervously. That's creepy as hell, he said. And then they went in. The inside was worse. The pews were still lined up, tilted and half buried. The altar lay cracked open, bones of fish and small animals tangled in debris. And yet, something about it looked untouched, like the water didn't belong there, like it was holding its breath. The camera feed glitched once, then steadied. That's when I saw them. Figures, standing in the aisles, not moving, not floating, standing, At first, I thought they were statues. Their bodies pale and still, faces tilted upward toward the light. There were 5, maybe 6 of them, in a straight line down the center of the church. The rookie swam closer. What the hell? Before he could finish, his light hit one of the figure's faces. It wasn't a statue. It was a person, skin gray, hair waving gently in the current, eyes open, mouth closed, no mask, no gear. Daniel's breathing went sharp over comms. "Back out," he said. "Everyone back out now." But the rookie didn't move. He just kept staring. The camera feed flickered again. The image bent, colors bleeding together. When it cleared, there were more figures. Rows of them now, standing shoulder to shoulder, facing the divers. And then, God help me, they started to move. Slowly, as if waking up. Their heads turned toward the camera. The rookie screamed. His light jerked wildly, cutting across the walls. I saw his fins thrashing, bubbles pouring upward, but the others didn't move. Daniel's voice came through the static. "Don't look at them. Don't." And then his mic went dead. The feed filled with noise, distorted sound, faint ringing beneath it. Bells again, muffled, distant, but I could feel it through the speakers. When the image came back, the camera had fallen to floor. It was pointing upward, tilted just enough to catch the roof of the church and the figures moving toward it. They didn't swim. They walked, slow, graceful steps through the water. Their clothes moved like robes, trailing behind them. One of them stopped near the altar. A woman by the look of her, long hair, white dress, her head tilted back, mouth opening slightly as if to sing. Then the light died. The feed went black. We waited on the dock for 3 hours before Daniel surfaced. He was alone. He didn't talk for 2 days. Just sat in his truck by the shore, staring at the water. When he finally did speak, it wasn't any of us. He called the sheriff himself. Told him there were bodies down there, but not dead ones. The sheriff didn't believe him. Said oxygen deprivation messes with the brain. But Daniel wouldn't let it go. That night, he brought me the camera. The same one I thought had been lost when the feed cut out. "Watch it," he said, "but only once." Then he left. I didn't see him again after that. The video was 15 minutes long. The first 10 were the dive, normal, steady like before, but in the last 5 minutes, things were different. The church wasn't empty. It was full, dozens of them now, standing in silence. Men, women, children, their eyes open, faces calm. And at the front, by the altar, that woman again. Her head bowed this time, hands clasped like she was praying. As the camera moved closer, something shimmered behind her, a shape. At first I thought it was a reflection, but it kept growing, spreading across the back wall like smoke. It wasn't smoke. It was water moving against the current, rising upward, forming a column behind her, and inside it, something was shifting. Arms, faces, like the lake itself was breathing. The woman lifted her head then, looked straight into the lens. Her mouth opened. Bubbles streamed out, but there was no sound. Only the bell, one single toll that rattled through the speakers. The camera fell again, and in the last few seconds, before the footage ended, I saw something I can't explain. The water started pouring upward. Not down, up, like gravity had flipped. Everything lifted. The pews, the silt, the bodies. The last thing the lens caught was a single hand reaching toward it, pale and thin, pressing against the glass. Then static. I deleted the file, burned the SD card. I couldn't risk anyone else seeing it. But sometimes when the nights are quiet, I still hear the sound it made before the feed cut out. That bell, slow, hollow, and lately, when I close my eyes, I see that woman's face again. Her eyes open, looking right through me. Last night, I dreamed I was underwater. Everything was still. The light above me was fading. And she was there, standing at the altar, waiting. She reached out her hand, and I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then she smiled, and I woke up choking. My sheets were soaked through, like I'd been pulled from a lake. I don't go near Mercy Reservoir anymore, but I know she's still down there, waiting for the next baptism. And when the bell rings again, I think it'll be for me. 1,300 words. My name's Raymond Cole. I've been the night custodian at Carter Elementary for 28 years. Tonight's my last shift. The place is coming down in a week. They're turning it into some community development site. Whatever that means, I just know this building, these halls, these classrooms, they've been more of a home to me than my own apartment ever was. The last bell rang here almost 2 years ago. The kids moved to the new school across town, but they kept me on a little longer to take care of the paperwork, lock up, and make sure the place stayed quiet. I walk the halls now like muscle memory. My keys jingle at my hip. The echo always comes back a second too late, like the sounds moving through something thicker than air. The smell never leaves either. Old chalk, floor wax, and that faint sweetness from the cafeteria freezer. The power's been cut to most of the building, except the security lights and the main office circuit. I start where I always do, down the east wing near the old first grade rooms. When I open the door to room 102, the smell hits me harder than usual. Wet wood, dust, like something's been sitting in the dark too long. I flip the switch out of habit. Nothing. The flashlight cuts across the room, landing on the little desks, still lined up neatly. I cleaned this place out months ago, boxed up all the leftover crayons and workbooks. But someone's been in here. There's chalk writing on the blackboard. See you tomorrow. The words are written in a child handwriting, crooked, uneven. I stand there longer than I should, just looking, trying to remember if I'd left it like that. But I couldn't have. I cleaned that board myself the day I packed the teacher's desk. The air feels heavy. I back out, pull the doors shut, and make a note on my clipboard. Room 102 graffiti. It's a habit, writing things down. I learned a long time ago, when you're the only one working nights, you start doubting what's real and what's just your eyes playing tricks. Paper doesn't lie. Next stop's the gym. The bleachers are half pulled out, and the basketball hoops hang like skeleton arms from the ceiling. I run the mop across the scuffed floor, one long stripe at a time. The sound echoes for what feels like miles. Halfway through, I hear something. A chair scrape. Light but sharp. I look up. The bleachers are still. Then I hear it again. From the stage this time. I climb the steps, shining the light through the curtains. There's an old upright piano back there, one they use for assemblies. The keys are yellowed, warped from humidity. I'd locked that piano cover months ago, but tonight it's open. I tell myself maybe one of the demo guys checked it earlier. Maybe they were looking for copper or parts. I close the lid again, lower it gently. My hand lingers on the wood, and I swear it's warm. I finish the rest of my rounds quietly. The whole time, I can't shake the thought of that chalkboard. Those 3 words. See you tomorrow. I go back to the office to clock out. The punch clock's still working, battery powered. It feels strange, hearing that little click in a place that's supposed to be dead. As I leave, I glance once more down the hall. Every classroom door is shut, except one. Room 102. It's open, just a few inches, like someone's waiting for me to come back. It's been 3 nights since that first shift. I should have just quit after that, but something about this place, it doesn't like to be left alone. The demolition team postponed the teardown, said they found moisture under the foundation, some kind of flooding issue from the nearby creek. I'm supposed to keep checking the basement pumps. The first night I went down there, the air was thick and stale. The pump room smelled like rust and mildew. But the worst part wasn't the smell. It was the sound. The pipes knocking. Like someone tapping from the inside. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. I told myself it was air pockets. It usually is. That same night, when I came back up, I saw a flicker from the far end of the hallway. Room 208. That room hasn't had power since the shutdown. I thought it might be my flashlight catching reflection, so I turned it off. The light was still there, faint, warm, pulsing every few seconds. I stood perfectly still, just listening. The whole building hummed, the way old buildings do when they're remembering something. Then I heard the faint hum of an overhead light. I walked toward it, counted my steps. I could hear the crunch of old tiles under my boots. The closer I got, the stronger the flicker became, steady now, like the light had finally decided to stay on. When I reached the doorway, the light went dead. Pitch black. I felt something brush past me. Cold air, quick as breath. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, it smelled faintly of crayons and disinfectant. Desks still lined up, though some had toppled. I moved my flashlight across the floor. Something was written on the chalkboard again. Names. A list. 23 of them, written in faint white chalk. I counted twice to be sure. At the bottom, one more name had been added in smaller, uneven letters. R. Cole. My throat went dry. I backed up, knocking my shoulder against the doorframe. My flashlight shook in my hand. The hallway behind me was darker than it should have been. The security lights, those dim red bulbs, were out. I turned back toward the board. The names were gone, wiped clean, but the faint outline of chalk dust still clung to the surface. I went straight to the office after that, called maintenance dispatch, even though I knew no one was there after midnight. Left a message saying the circuits were acting up, but as I hung up, I heard the intercom crackle, a hiss of static, then a low pop. Then faintly, "Mr. Cole, please return to your classroom." I froze. The line went dead. I tried the button. Nothing. The system's not even connected anymore. I pulled the cord from the wall just to be sure. The rest of the night, I stayed in the janitor's closet with the lights on, my back against the shelves, mop handle across my knees like a weapon. Around 3 a.m., I must have dozed off, because when I opened my eyes again, the closet door was open, and in the hallway, just outside, I could see a faint light shining under the door of room 208. It pulsed like before, almost like it was breathing. I told myself I'd quit after last night, but here I am again. The foreman called earlier, said they're finally clearing the demolition permit. The equipment's coming Monday morning. He wanted me to secure the perimeter, make sure no one's broken in. No one ever breaks in here. People avoid this place now. Kids dare each other to walk up to the fence at night, but nobody crosses it. I got here around 10. The air was colder than usual. The windows fogged over from the inside, like something was breathing against the glass. The whole building smelled like rain, even though the sky was clear. I walked the halls slow, my flashlight shaking a little. I couldn't tell if it was my hand or the floor vibrating. Everything was too quiet. When I reached the main office, I noticed the intercom light was on again. Solid red. It shouldn't be. I stared at it for a while, waiting. Then, from the speakers, static. Then a voice. Small, high-pitched. "Good morning, class." I stood perfectly still. It was a child's voice. A girl. The sound came from every speaker in the building, like morning announcements. "Please take your seats." I swallowed hard, backing toward the doorway. Then the attendants began, one by one. Names I hadn't heard in years. Names from old rosters. Kids I used to see running through the halls, laughing, crying, spilling milk cartons. Each name was followed by a pause, then a faint whisper. "Here." The intercom crackled again. Then silence, until the last one. "Raymond Cole." Pause, then the same soft whisper. "Here." I dropped the flashlight. It rolled across the floor, the beam spinning wildly. I backed into the hall, but the sound followed, each speaker lighting up as I passed. That same static hiss pulsing overhead. "Here, here, here." It grew louder, overlapping itself, the voices rising, children's voices filling every corner. I ran. I don't remember which direction. The hallways all looked the same. Lockers, bulletin boards, old posters curling off the walls. The sound chased me. When I reached the gym doors, I pushed through and slammed them behind me. My hands were shaking. The gym was dark, except for one single light over the stage. The piano sat there again, lit open, and in front of it, shadows, small ones, dozens of them. They stood perfectly still, facing me. I took one step forward, and they all turned their heads. The air went cold. I could see my breath drift through the beam of the light. Then, from the speakers above the stage, Please rise for the morning prayer. They moved in unison, hands clasped, heads bowed, and the piano began to play. No one was sitting there, but the keys moved, slow, deliberate, the same song we used to play at assemblies. This little light of mine, their voices joined in, soft, hollow, like the sound was coming from deep underwater. I stumbled back, hit the wall, and ran for the door. But when I opened it, I was no longer in the gym. I was standing in room 102, desks lined up, chalkboard clean, and on it, written in perfect handwriting, "See you tomorrow." I turned to run again, but the door was gone. Only windows, only dark. The air thickened, heavy with that same sweetness from a cafeteria freezer. And then the intercom clicked on one last time. A single voice, whispering, soft as breath. "Mr. Cole, class isn't over yet." I don't remember what happened next. They found me the next morning in the hallway, sitting against the wall, soaking wet. My clothes smelled like lake water. The police report said the building systems were completely shut down. No power, no intercom connection, nothing. They called it a stress reaction. Hallucination brought on by fatigue. Maybe they're right. But last night, I drove by the old school again. They've already fenced it off for demolition. But in the dark, through the cracks in the plywood, I could see a single light still glowing inside. Room 102. And if you listen close, real close, you can still hear it. The bell, ringing for class to begin. Most people don't even know we exist. Not really. They think once a case is closed, everything goes into some government warehouse, like in those old movies. In truth, it's just a basement under courthouse. Concrete walls, a dozen rows of shelves, and the constant hum of dehumidifiers trying to keep decades of crime scenes from rotting away. I'm not a cop. I'm not even law enforcement. I'm what they call a forensic archivist. I log, clean, and sometimes review old evidence for disposal or digital indexing. I spend my nights surrounded by sealed bags, boxes, and fading paper tags. Tiny ghosts of tragedies long forgotten. Most nights, I don't mind it. The stillness helps. I don't get along with crowds. But I remember the night I found that box. The one marked 19-47A. It was a Thursday. I'd been assigned to audit the unsorted storage room, a place most of the staff avoided because the lights flicker and the air smells like wet plaster. The old cases sit back there, anything pre-1960. Yellow tags, brittle cardboard, all stacked high and covered in dust. I started at the far end, clipboard in hand, scanning the shelves. I checked one after another, reading the case codes out loud to myself. 18-62C, 19-31D, 19-44B. Then I stopped. Tucked between two other boxes was something that didn't belong. It wasn't dusty. The tape ceiling looked almost new, tight, clean edges, even though everything around it had been untouched for decades. The label read, Evidence Box 19-47A. Below it, written in pen, was a case number. Hashtag 0000-000. That's not possible. Every case has a number, even unassigned ones. I tilted my flashlight closer. No entry logs, no seal initials, nothing in the ledger beside it. Just the box, like it had appeared on the shelf by itself. At first, I thought it might have been an old prank or misplaced training mock-up. So I jotted down the label, carried it back to my desk, and logged it into the database. No results. No record in the county's digital archive, not even in the legacy paper log. It didn't exist. That's when I noticed the corner of the box was slightly warped, like something had pressed from the inside at one point. The cardboard had bulged outward and then sunk back again. I don't know why, but the sight of it made my stomach turn. Protocol says I should have logged it as an anomaly and reported it to the evidence officer. But I didn't. I wanted to know what was inside. The seal was dated March 19, 1947. The tape peeled off in one long, clean strip. No dust under it, no brittleness. The air that came out smelled faintly of iron and something sweet like old syrup. Inside, everything was neatly wrapped in brown paper. There were 4 objects in total. A small glass jar filled with murky liquid. A black and white photograph, folded in half, a silver bracelet, broken in the middle, and a sealed envelope marked Transcript A. I picked up the jar first. The label had faded, but I could make out 3 letters, R-E-D, and then smudges. Inside the liquid was something pale and soft, like a piece of cloth or maybe skin. The glass felt cold, even though the room was warm. The photograph was next. I unfolded it carefully, trying not to tear the crease. It showed a dirt road cutting through pine trees. No people, no vehicles, but there was something at the very edge of the frame, a shape that looked like a figure standing just behind a tree. No face, no detail, just there. I glanced at the back of the photo. There was handwriting in neat cursive. He followed me home. My skin prickled. The bracelet came next. Silver, tarnished with a broken clasp. It looked like it had been pulled apart. The tiny charm hanging from it was a letter, the letter R. When I finally opened the envelope, I was shaking. Inside was a single sheet of paper, yellowed and soft from age. Typed in all caps were the words, Transcript A, interview with subject 19-47A. Then, beneath that, a few lines. They said I shouldn't open the door, but he was already inside. And then, typed again at the bottom, the same phrase, over and over, like someone had hit the keys until the ribbon faded. Inside, 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 inside. The last word trailed off midline, as if interrupted. I dropped the page and stepped back. The lights above me flickered once. Then again, when they steadied, something strange happened. The air felt thicker, not colder, but heavier, like humidity pressing against my chest. The dehumidifier in the corner shut off on its own, even though it wasn't on a timer. Then, somewhere in the back rows of shelving, I heard a soft click, like another box being unlatched. I froze. The sound came again, a little louder, cardboard tearing. Footsteps, slow, dragging ones, brushing against concrete. I told myself it had to be the pipes or maybe one of the janitors upstairs, but I couldn't move. The footsteps stopped near the aisle where I'd found the box. Silence. Then, faintly, something brushed the floor. A whisper, like someone's sleeve dragging across cardboard. I tried to call out, but my voice cracked. When I finally managed a sound, it came out small. Hello? Who's down here? No answer. Just that same, thick air pressing in. I picked up the flashlight and shone it toward the aisle. Nothing. Just boxes stacked high. But one of them, 2 shelves up, was open. Not the one I'd pulled. Another. The label read 19-47B. That box wasn't there before. I swear it wasn't. I grabbed my phone, opened the camera, and snapped a picture of both boxes, the one on my desk and the one on the shelf, just to have proof. The flash caught something faint on the wall behind the shelves. Letters, smeared in dust. R-E-D. I stared at it until my eyes watered. I don't remember packing up the box again. I must have, but when I looked down, it was sealed. Tape pressed perfectly back in place. The air smelled like iron again. I left it on the desk and went home early. Told my supervisor the next morning that I'd found an unlogged box. He said he'd check the record himself and told me not to worry. When I came back the next night, he wasn't there. His office was locked, lights off. The box was gone. All that was left on my desk was the photo, the one of the dirt road. But now, the figure in the corner wasn't behind the tree anymore. It was standing in the middle of the road, closer to the camera, and under it, in the same faded handwriting, were new words. He's inside again. That's when I realized something I can't explain. The old evidence tag, the one I'd peeled off the box when I first opened it, it was stuck to the back of my shirt. And written on it, in fresh black ink, was my own name. Cole R. 2023. That's not possible. I never wrote that tag. But when I tried to peel it off, it wouldn't come loose. It felt like the glue had seeped through the fabric. Or maybe, like it had grown there. I didn't plan to open another box. Not after what happened with 19-47A. But curiosity is a sickness. Once it takes root, it eats at you until you give in. A week had passed. I hadn't slept well since the night I found that first box. My supervisor never came back to work. They said he'd taken leave for personal reasons. Nobody could tell me where he went. His office stayed locked. But one morning, when I came in early, I found the key sitting on my desk. No note, no explanation, just the key. That's how I ended up standing in front of his office door at 6:30 in the morning, staring at the faded, authorized personnel only sign. When I turned the key, it stuck halfway, like it hadn't been used in a long time. The air inside the room was stale, heavy with dust, and something faintly chemical, like film developer. Everything was neat, except for one thing. On the middle of his desk sat a cardboard box. Box 19-47C. Same handwriting, same tape, same lack of entry record. I told myself I wouldn't touch it. I even walked away, almost made it to the door, but I couldn't. It was like it was waiting for me. The tape peeled back easy this time. Inside there was no jar, no paper, just a small metal canister, a film reel, maybe 8 inches wide, wrapped in wax paper. On the top of the reel, written in neat cursive, were the words, "The Everetts, 1947. The name meant nothing to me, but I logged into the archive terminal and ran a search anyway. No case file, no family records, not even a birth certificate under that surname from that year in our county. It was as if they never existed. The reel was standard 16mm film. Oh, but intact. I had access to a viewing station in the microfilm room. Against every bit of common sense, I threaded the reel through the machine. The film flickered to life, grainy, washed-out color. It opened on a 2-story farmhouse, bright under afternoon sun. A woman in a floral dress waved at the camera from the porch. A man, maybe mid-30s, carried a little girl in his arms. She couldn't have been older than 6. They smiled. They laughed. It looked like any home movie from the era. Simple, innocent, but there was no sound. The woman turned and pointed toward a tire swing hanging from an oak tree. The man carried the girl toward it. The camera followed them shakily, as if filmed by another family member. Then, for a moment, the image stuttered, a few frames skipped. When it came back, the lighting had changed. It wasn't afternoon anymore. The sky was darker, gray, maybe close to dusk. The family was still there, but they weren't moving. The mother stood by the porch steps, frozen mid-wave. The man held the girl, but his eyes were fixed on the camera, not smiling, just staring. The film crackled and popped as I paused it, my breath catching. The real word, clicking softly as it spun to a stop. I leaned closer to the screen. The man's face was strangely blurred, not out of focus, but smeared like the emotion itself had been rubbed away. I reversed the reel, played it back from the start. Same thing, happy family, bright sunlight. Then the sudden jump, the stillness, the stare. But this time, the man's head turned slightly, just enough that his eyes seemed to meet mine through the lens. I flinched and stopped the reel again. My reflection in the viewing glass looked pale, washed in that gray-blue light from the projector. Something in the silence felt wrong, too heavy. When I turned the light back on, I noticed something on the reel's label that I hadn't before. Faint scratches, carved into the metal beneath the handwriting. For words, "Don't watch the Yendi." My stomach tightened. The reel wasn't even halfway through. I thought about rewinding it, locking it away, reporting it to evidence control. But instead, I pressed play. The image flickered again, this time cutting to the family sitting at a dinner table. The film quality had degraded, colors fading into reddish-brown. The girl sat between her parents, her small hands clasped in front of her as if praying. The mother wasn't smiling now. The father's face was turned away, and someone else, someone off-screen, was whispering. It wasn't clear, but the voice sounded close to the microphone. Too close. The whispering grew louder, forming words I couldn't fully make out. Something about counting heads and making sure. Then, suddenly, the mother lifted her head, and the whispering stopped. The next few seconds were just the sound of projector, the faint hum of the film running through my hands. Then the picture shifted again, darker, Grainer. The family was gone. The camera pointed toward a closed cellar door at the back of the farmhouse. The door trembled once. Then again, someone was knocking from inside. 3 slow knocks. Then silence. The film started to buckle. The reel slowing down. The image warping as heat from the bulb burned through on the frames. I turned the light off and sat there in the dark, heart pounding in my chest. When I took the reel off, my fingers brushed the metal, and it felt warm. Too warm, as if it had just come out of a projector that had been running for hours. I carried it back to my desk, grabbed a pair of gloves, and placed it back inside the box. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. Inside the box, beneath the wax paper, was a single photo, black and white grainy. It showed the same farmhouse in the film, except it was half collapsed. The roof had caved in, and on the bottom corner, written in faded pencil, were the words, "Property condemned, March 19, 1947. The same date as the first box. That night, I couldn't shake it from my head. The faces, the whispers, the cellar door. It felt less like a movie and more like a confession someone had buried. I couldn't find a single record of the Everett family. No police file, no census listing, no land record. It was as if they'd never lived at all. But something bothered me more. When I replayed the footage the next day, the opening scene was different. It didn't start with a farmhouse anymore. It started with a shot of a basement, dimly lit, with water stains along the walls. And in the center of the frame, a table. On the table sat a box, a cardboard one, with a handwritten label, 19-47A. I froze. The breath left my lungs. It was my box, the one from before. I ran the film back, forward. It was there, no mistake. And when I paused it, the faint outline of a figure appeared in the far corner of the frame. A man, tall, shoulders hunched, facing the camera, watching me. I ejected the reel, my hand shaking, and dropped it back into the box. I tried to tape it shut again, but the tape wouldn't stick. The edges of the cardboard felt damp, like it had soaked up moisture. I threw the whole thing into a plastic bin and locked it in the quarantine cabinet. When I came back the next morning, the cabinet door was open. Inside was a single item, not the reel, not the box. Just a silver bracelet from 19-47A. And next to it, a new label written in my handwriting, though I swear I never wrote it. 19-47D. Final reel. That's when I realized the truth. Whoever, or whatever, was making these boxes wasn't done yet. It was documenting me now. And the next one, the one that's coming, isn't going to be about them. It's going to be about me. That's the part that won't leave me alone. There's an entry in the logbook with my name, my signature, the date, everything. It says box 19-47D was signed out at 9:14 p.m. 2 nights ago, but I don't remember being there. I've replayed that day over and over in my head. I remember leaving early. I remember locking up. I remember driving home, stopping at the red light near the old theater. But the next thing I remember after that is waking up in my car. It was parked behind the archives building. Engine off, keys still in the ignition, and on the passenger seat was the box. It wasn't sealed anymore. The top was half open, and I could see the edge of a film reel inside, glinting in the moonlight. There was also something else, a note, handwritten in that same looping script I'd seen before. It said, "Do not return." The words were underlined twice. At first, I thought it was a prank. Maybe some night shift tech trying to mess with me after the last 2 incidents. But the handwriting, it was mine. I drove home with the box sitting on the seat beside me, trying not to look at it. I don't remember taking it into my apartment. I just remember closing the door, leaning against it, and realizing how quiet everything was. That kind of silence doesn't feel natural. It's too still. It presses in like air before a storm. When I finally sat down and turned on the lamp, the box was already on the table. I didn't put it there. I swear I didn't. The wax paper around the reel had been peeled back. The film itself looked newer this time, cleaner, like it hadn't aged a day since 1947. No label, no title, just a strip of film wound tight, humming faintly when I touched it. That hum wasn't in my head. It was real, low, like a refrigerator running, but deeper somehow, almost like something breathing through the metal. I don't know why I did it, but I set up my projector. As soon as the bulb flicked on, the air shifted, warmer, heavier. The reel began to spin. It opened on the same basement I'd seen before. The camera faced the table again. Only this time there was someone sitting behind it. It was me. Same shirt, same watch, same tired face. I was sitting there with the box open in front of me, just like I was now. The film version of me looked into the camera and said something. No sound came out, but I could see my lips move. I leaned forward, tried to read them, and then, for a single frame, the image stuttered. When it cleared, the me on screen was gone. The chair was empty. The box was gone. I tried to stop the projector, but the switch wouldn't move. The film kept running, the reel turning faster than it should have. The camera panned slowly toward the far side of the basement. There was a door there, the same door I'd seen before half open, showing nothing but black behind it. And then, from inside that black, something moved. Not a person. Not exactly. More like a shape. Tall, wrong, flickering at the edges like the film couldn't hold it properly. It stepped closer until it filled the frame completely. And that's when the lights in my apartment went out. The projector was still running, but there was no image now. Just the faint glow of the bulb and the spinning sound of the reel. I unplugged it, heart hammering, and waited for my eyes to adjust. When the power came back a few seconds later, the projector was off. The reel had stopped, but the box was gone. I tore the place apart looking for it. I checked the kitchen, the hallway, even the closet. Nothing. Not even the wax paper it had been wrapped in. It was just gone. I went back to the archives the next morning, half convinced I'd find it sitting on my desk. Instead, I found an empty slot on the shelf where 19-47D had been stored. The log book still said checked out. Under return date, there was a blank space, and a note written underneath it in red ink. Do not return. I didn't write that one. I tried asking the others if anyone had seen me coming that night. One of the guards said he thought he saw my car pull up around 9, but when he came to check, no one was inside. He swore he saw the passenger door open on its own. That was when I started to notice small things changing around me. In the break room, my mug, the one with the department logo, was cracked down the middle, though I hadn't touched it. My ID badge picture looked slightly different, like it had been reprinted. Same photo, but my eyes were looking off to the side instead of straight ahead. And every time I tried to look up my own employee record, the screen froze. It wasn't until 2 nights later that I found the final note. It was taped to my front door when I got home. No envelope, just a folded piece of paper with those same 4 words. Box 19-47E in progress. That night, I dreamed about the film again. Only this time, it wasn't in black and white. It was in color. The camera moved through the basement, down the narrow hallway behind the door. The walls were made of concrete, wet with something dark. My shadow moved along the wall ahead of me, even though there was no light source. At the end of the hall was another door, and when I opened it, I saw rows of shelves, metal shelves, stacked high with cardboard boxes. Each one had a label. 19-47A, 19-47B, 19-47C, 19-47D. And then at the very end of the row, one that hadn't been there before. 19-47E. The lid was off. Inside was a reel of film. And on the surface of the film, I could see something moving, not images, but shapes pressing against it, like someone trapped beneath plastic, pushing to get out. Then I saw myself in the reflection of the metal shelf. Except it wasn't a reflection. It blinked when I didn't. I woke up standing in the hallway of my building, holding my keys, my shoes wet. It was 3 in the morning, and on the wall behind me, written in something I hoped was just rust, were the words. Checked out. No signature. No date. Just that. I didn't go back to the archives after that. I packed a bag, drove until the gaslight came on, and checked into a motel off the interstate. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But this morning, when I woke up, there was something new waiting for me on the nightstand. A small cardboard box, sealed with the same yellow tape. No label this time. Just one handwritten message across the top, in my own handwriting. Do not return. I stared at it for a long time. My hands were shaking, but I could feel something moving inside. A faint vibration, like a heartbeat or like film running through a reel. I haven't opened it. I don't think I need to, because deep down, I already know what's inside. It's me, and the next person who opens it, they'll see me looking back at them from the other side of the film, just like I did. And maybe then, I'll finally understand why these boxes keep appearing. Because once you've opened one, once you've seen what's inside, you don't get to go back. You're not the archivist anymore. You're the archive. It was almost midnight when I decided to follow the coordinates. I told myself I was just curious, that it was part of the job, part of my duty. But the truth was simpler than that. I couldn't stop thinking about that voice. The one I'd heard over the radio last night. The one that said my name even though no one should have known it. I'd been a deputy in Harlan County for 12 years, and I'd heard my share of strange calls. Static bursts, prank transmissions, even ghost frequencies bouncing off the mountain ridges. But this was different. The voice didn't sound like it came through a radio at all. It sounded close, like it was whispering inside the patrol car with me. When I finally tracked the coordinates from that last transmission, they pointed to an old highway off Route 62, a forgotten stretch that wound deep into the Appalachian foothills. I hadn't been that way in years. The last time I did, I was a rookie. There'd been a fire, a rest stop that went up in flames after a tanker accident. The county closed it down and rerouted the road a few years later. It shouldn't even be on the map anymore, but the coordinates led there anyway. The deeper I drove, the quieter it got. No houses, no lights, not even the hum of power lines. Just the steady thump of my tires against cracked pavement and the whisper of wind slipping through the trees. Every few miles, my radio would crackle, catching half a word before going dead again. 13, stop. Can you hear me? I tried to answer. Unit 12 responding. Say again? Nothing. Just static. I should have turned around right then. I even slowed down, my hand hovering over the switch to call dispatch. But when I looked at the GPS screen again, I noticed something strange. The map had changed. It no longer showed the coordinates as a pin. It showed a thin, pulsing blue line leading further ahead, twisting down the mountain road toward a gray square labeled rest area. The label shouldn't have been there. The state scrubbed that site decades ago. But the line pulsed like it was alive, urging me forward. I drove on. The fog came in slow, first as a low mist rolling off the woods, then thicker, heavier, swallowing my headlights until the world turned white. My wipers squeaked uselessly across the glass. I could barely see the hood of my own car. Then, through the haze, a faint orange glow flickered in the distance. I thought it might be another car at first, or maybe a campfire. But as I got closer, the shape of it took form. The shell of a small brick building, half collapsed, surrounded by blackened concrete. The rest stopped. The windows were gone, eaten by smoke and time. The roof sagged like wet cardboard. The air smelled faintly of burned wood, though the fire had been out for nearly 30 years. I parked, left the engine running, and stepped out. The air was colder than it should have been. Damp, too, like the fog was seeping into my skin. The gravel crunched under my boots as I walked closer. I called out, "Hello? County Sheriff's Department. Anyone out here?" No answer. The fog muffled my voice, swallowing a whole. Inside, the rest stop was little more than rubble. The floor tiles were cracked, the bathroom signs melted, half buried in ash. Someone had spray painted over the walls, old graffiti in faded red, most of it unreadable except for one word that stood out. Stay. I don't know why, but that word made my stomach twist. It didn't feel like a warning. It felt like an order. I moved deeper in, shining my flashlight across the room. The beam caught a burned bench, a twisted metal sink, and something else, a payphone, still bolted to the wall. That shouldn't have been there. The payphones were ripped out when the fire happened. I remember reading it in the report, but this one looked new. I stepped closer. The receiver hung off the hook, swinging slightly. The cord was perfectly intact. When I reached for it, I felt warmth, faint but real, like someone had just been holding it. And then it rang. The sound was sharp, loud in the empty space. I froze, staring at it. It rang again. I shouldn't have answered. God knows I shouldn't have. But something in me, that same instinct that makes you check the dark corner twice, made me pick it up. Hello. At first, all I heard was breathing. Shallow, uneven. Then a voice. It sounded like mine. Unit 12, copy? My throat went dry. Who is this? The breathing grew louder. Then the voice came again, clearer this time. Don't come back. I stepped backward without realizing it. The receiver still pressed to my ear. Who is this? Identify yourself. Static filled the line. A long, hissing burst. And then a second voice whispered, soft, almost too quiet to catch. She's still waiting. The line went dead. I stood there for a long time, listening to nothing, the hum of the dial tone sinking into my bones. When I finally hung it up, I noticed something that made my chest tighten. The payphone wasn't dusty anymore. The floor beneath it was clean, almost polished, and the smell of burned would have been replaced with something else. Perfume, faint, floral, familiar. It hit me all at once. That scent. It was the same perfume worn by Officer Daniels. She'd gone missing during the original rest stop fire. They never found her body. Only her badge and melted flashlight, buried in the wreckage. I stepped back toward the doorway, scanning the fog. My light caught something moving outside, just a flash of fabric, like someone walking past a car. Daniels. I hurried outside. The fog was thicker now, dense enough to glow under my headlights. I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead, but there was a shape standing near the patrol car, small, feminine, shoulders slumped. I called out again, voice trembling. Officer Daniels? The figure turned slightly. I saw her uniform, the outline of her badge. My heart nearly stopped, but then I realized her face was wrong. Not burned, blurred, like her features were erased, smudged out by something that didn't want to be recognized. She raised one arm slowly, pointing toward the woods behind the rest stop. I followed her gaze, or whatever was left of it, and that's when I saw the light, a faint glow deep between the trees, like the beam of a flashlight, moving steadily away. Then another, and another. They were forming a line, stretching into the forest, dozens of lights bobbing softly in the dark. Voices drifted from the trees, low, distant, dozens of them. Some were laughing, some were crying, some were whispering words I couldn't make out. I stepped closer to the tree line. The air grew colder. The fog seemed to pulse, like it was breathing around me. One of the voices called my name. I knew it was her. I don't know how long I stood there. My radio buzzed faintly on my shoulder, a hiss of static breaking through. Then, through the noise, a voice, dispatch, came through. Unit 12, do you copy? We're still not seeing you on the grid. Where are you? I grabbed the mic. This is Unit 12. I followed the coordinates. I'm at the old rest stop, off Route 62. I need backup. Silence. Then the same voice came back, quiet, careful. Unit 12, that site burned down in 1979. You can't be there. I looked back at the building. The fog shifted just enough for me to see the truth. There was no brick, no windows, no standing structure at all. Just a blackened foundation, half swallowed by weeds and mud. The payphone was gone. The car was still running, but the lights were dimming. My breath fogged the glass even though the night had turned warm again. Somewhere in the distance, I heard it. Faint but clear. A church bell, one single. Drawn-out toll echoing through the trees. Then another, and another. I didn't wait for a fourth. I threw the car into reverse, tires kicking gravel, and sped back down the road until the fog thinned and the forest gave way to open highway again. When I finally looked at the GPS, the blue line was gone. No coordinates, no route, just a blinking arrow showing me parked in the middle of nowhere. Back at the station, I filed a report. I kept it simple: radio interference, false signal, no contact made. But when I logged the timestamp, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The system listed my location as Rest Area 13 active. That rest stop hasn't been on county records since the day it burned down, and now it's marked active again. I still smell the smoke sometimes, and when I'm out on patrol, late at night, the radio will catch a whisper, faint, crackling through the static. Unit 12. It's her voice, always her voice. And every time, I can hear that faint bell in the background, counting down, waiting for me to come back.